They glisten in the flashing light of his maddened mind, so clear, so perfect. The stuff that dreams are made of. Dreams of hope, unity, love, and harmony. These are the dreams of his father. His name is David Haller, but you might know him by another name. Legion. He is the son of the mutant known as Charles Xavier. For a long time, he has been in a coma. His body wastes away at one of the best hospitals in Tel Aviv, but his mind lives on elsewhere, with a woman long dead that he killed himself. Her name is Destiny, or at least it was. She has seen David's dream, and there is still hope for it. If only his father had been given a real chance to fulfill the dream they share. David wakes up, wondering what Destiny meant. The problem with dreams is they tend to fade. Nightmares, on the other hand. Nightmares can linger. David wanders through the desert. He has no idea where he is going, but for the first time in his life, he has purpose, a goal, a dream. David was driven insane by his overwhelming mental power, and he became known as Legion. But he's changed. He is healed and whole. Not entirely sane, he has a destiny. Only he can make the world right, the way it was always meant to be. Much like his son, Xavier has dreams too. Tonight he has an encounter with one of his oldest friends, and perhaps his worst enemy. The dream is set in Israel, a place the two men remember well. These were the happiest times of their lives. Young, naive, and with vastly different ideologies, the two men were sure they could look past their differences. But what always happened. Reality got in the way. Sides were taken. Magneto asked Xavier if he ever wonders what could have been, had he not stood in the way of Charles over all these years. How much time did the two waste fighting one another, instead of helping their own race? Charles replies such thoughts are insane. The world wouldn't automatically be a better place if Magneto just disappeared. But Eric replies that's exactly what he thinks. Magneto created a disruptive environment of conflict where it should have been collaboration and peace. Charles insists that, for better or worse, this is simply the way things are. There's no changing that. David, however, disagrees. Charles is woken up by Beast. Thanking Hank for breaking David's hold on him, he says they need to prepare themselves as he just survived an attack. Xavier's son Legion has returned, but he's going to be more dangerous than ever before. Charles could detect his son has become whole, healed, and finally combined into one entity. With a mind potentially more powerful than his own, now focused and undamaged, things aren't looking good, to say the least. Meanwhile, Mystique and X-Force find themselves face to face with the reawakened David. He's not surprised to see Mystique, as Destiny said she would be coming. However, this is an unexpected turn of events for Raven, but she still will not let it deter her from her revenge. She strikes out at the boy, but he has no difficulty knocking her back. Mystique refuses to relent. David killed Destiny, her friend, and she vows to avenge the woman, even if she has to chase him to the ends of the earth. X-Force tries to intervene, but they are unable to do so, and Mystique slips from their grasp. Wolfsbane chases after the fugitive, while the exertion makes the still recovering David lay back in his bed. David's mother, Gabrielle, comes in and comforts him, overjoyed at the changes in the young man. For the first time in a long time, he's calling her mother, and his alternate personalities seem to have vanished. In his dreams, David encounters Destiny once more. He apologizes for killing her, but she understands it's not his fault. In fact, she'd rather he not let the guilt get to him. The burden has already set David on a course that will change all of reality forever. She does, however, insist the young man deliver her message to Mystique. David seems reluctant to do so, but promises that everything will be okay. He's going to make it all better. The young man wakes up ranting about how he will make his father happy once again, worrying his mother. She goes outside to talk with Forge about it for a moment, but when they return to his room, he is gone. Not long after this, X-Force corners Mystique when David approaches them, asking to talk to Raven. But they'll need to do this somewhere quiet, and the young man knows the perfect place. Raven finds herself transported within David's own mind. He reveals Destiny's message, that she loves Raven, but must be wary of times not shared, hearts not loved, and destinies not written. With a single blow, Mystique lay defeated in body and mind. Seeing this, X-Force springs into action, but they are no match for David, and he easily sends them away. Mystique demands David explain himself, but he only says he has to go now and fix everything. He leaves her alone to dwell on what has happened. A short time later, the X-Men arrived in Israel on Xavier's orders. They meet up with Gabrielle, who takes them to the briefing room. The mutants can't help but notice many soldiers wounded along the way, and an ominous black sphere in the distance. She explains the situation with David. They've tried everything to get past the barrier the boy has erected around him, but to no avail. Everything explodes or gives out the second it gets close to this strange anomaly. Storm promises to do whatever it takes, whatever the risk. They're going to get in and take control of the situation. With some difficulty, they are able to fly themselves through David's barrier, where Legion eagerly confronts what he calls his step-siblings. The mutants find themselves easily overpowered by David, who hardly has any difficulty against them. Toying with them, he sends himself and Storm through time, simply to taunt her before bringing them back to the present. David explains that his plan is to travel back in time to an important moment in mutant history, and change things for the better. At these words, Bishop attacks, all too familiar with the terrible effects of time travel, but he cannot handle the level of time-traveling energies currently flowing around David. However, Iceman and Jean Grey reveal Bishop was just a distraction, and they hit him with everything they've got. The X-Men regroup, but David is far from stopped. He begins heading back in time, finally finding that critical moment he was looking for. In a desperate move, Storm has Psylocke make a psychic link with Bishop's mind. With Bishop having absorbed enough of David's energy, the X-Men have successfully tethered themselves to David, except for Jean Grey. She watches, helplessly, as David and her friends are pulled through time. Jean is left alone and contacts Charles. She tells him what has happened, but she's running out of energy from the fight. As Xavier calls out to her, she falls unconscious. Meanwhile, far, far away, on the Shi'ar throne world known as Chandalar, the palace silently orbits this alien planet. Lilandra Nuramani, Majestrix of the Shi'ar Empire, sleeps peacefully for the first time in the weeks since she was forced to separate with the man she loves, Charles Xavier. Sadly, it does not last. Lilandra is surprised to find her guardian Gladiator has been knocked unconscious. The intruder, a being named Jaff, apologizes, but says there's no time to talk his way past the guards. The Empress does not understand this, as Jaff is never supposed to leave his post. His duty, to protect the Makran crystal, the nexus of all reality, is a sacred task of utmost importance. But that's exactly the problem. If they don't act, pretty soon there won't be a reality to protect. Rogue and Angel are then dispatched to find Jean, but they're having trouble pinpointing her. The rest of the X-Men have been brought in on the scene, and with the cooperation of the Israeli government, they are eventually able to find their fallen comrade. The others, however, are long gone. Jean is revived and explains exactly what happened, but they have no idea where Legion or the others went. She only knows one thing for sure, that they are somewhere in the past. 20 years ago, the other X-Men are trying to piece things together, but the journey has scrambled their memories, so they have no idea why they are here or what they are supposed to do. Elsewhere, Eric Lenscher looks over a patient. The stranger's name is unknown, but the John Doe is stirring. The young man says he can feel the anger burning inside the person that will one day call himself Magneto, and Legion begins to assault him telepathically. David feels Eric's agony, unable to comprehend how someone could survive such pain every day. Tormented by these memories, Magnus demands that David stop this at once. He leaves in a huff as David calls out to him, confused and sorry for his actions. It seems that like the X-Men, David has no memory after making the journey. Out in the streets, the Charles and Gabrielle of the past take a walk through a market, though they are stopped when Xavier vaguely detects Magnus calling out to him, and sure enough, his friend comes running up to them a moment later. He explains what happens, and the two of them go back and find David sprawled out on the floor. Xavier tries to help the stranger, and wonders just what kind of madness they have gotten themselves involved in. In the present, Charles calls in some reinforcements, and in no time at all, Cable and Domino arrive. They begin to brief the two, but the Israeli forces attempt to arrest Cable, as the mutant is wanted for crimes against the state. Things get tense, but the standoff is interrupted when the sky erupts in lightning. Lilandra appears before everyone, and declares that David is threatening all of reality. Charles is shocked at this and asks how she knows that his son could possibly be such a threat. She replies she got the information from a very reliable source. Back in the past, Xavier explains his radical new ideas of Homo superior to a skeptical Eric. Magnus is doubtful that such beings could even exist, but the two men are happy to have met one another regardless. The way Charles talks, Magnus thinks they could do anything together. When one of the barmen begins tormenting a disabled patron, Xavier and Eric step in, causing a massive fight they easily win. Magnus is impressed by his new friend, and the two agree that any dream worth having is a dream worth fighting for. According to Lilandra, Legion stands to shatter the Macran crystal unless the X-Men in the past can stop him. But there's no telling what has happened to their minds hitching a ride with Legion, so with the help of the Shi'ar, the X-Men have rigged a device to send Cable's mind back in time, thanks to the mutant's unique and latent time travel abilities. Cable will have to telepathically contact the X-Men and remind them of this critical mission. With nothing else they can do, the team activates the device. Back in time, the others have set themselves up with jobs while Psylocke unsuccessfully tries to piece their memories back together. Nerves between the group are wearing thin as the situation is becoming more and more frustrating. Meanwhile, Eric affirms his desires to see Charles' dream come true one day. The two men agree to go back to the hospital. Xavier will tend to his lover, Gabrielle, while Magnus will investigate this strange new patient further. The abilities of this John Doe are promising, and they could represent the exact type of Homo superior Charles had been theorizing about. At the hospital, David sees his mother, recognizing her as his memories begin to resurface. She sees him, but he is able to disguise himself as his father. David asks if she thinks Xavier could do anything he sets his mind to, and she says that he could. He thinks so too, that if Charles set his mind to anything, he can make the world a truly better place. Gabrielle is confused by him, but David is now certain of what he must do. Without any enemies to bar his way, Charles could do anything, or take anything he wanted. As the real Charles Xavier heads to the hospital, he detects something happening to Gabrielle. He and Xavier rush off to find her. Not far from this, Bishop is working away when Cable appears before him. However, before Nathan can act, he is frozen in place by Iceman. Not recognizing the men, the X-Men are worried that he might be hostile. Cable doesn't have time to explain though, so he just touches Bishop, sending a chain telepathic message to the entire group. Cable urges them to stop Legion and begs them to remember, before he is pulled back into the present. Over at the hospital, Eric and Charles find Gabrielle unconscious, with a fully powered Legion standing before them. David apologizes, but says that Eric is destined to become the greatest villain the world has ever known, and he is not going to let that happen. In the present, Scott Summers looks over Cable. He is knocked back when Nathan returns from the past. The mutant is not exactly sure what happened to him, so he agrees to let Charles try and untangle his memory of the whole affair. Xavier obliges, affirming that Cable made it to the past and delivered the warning successfully. All they can do now is wait, and hope. Gambit is not happy with this and gets into a shouting match with Cable, while Domino and Rogue nearly come to blows when one of them tries to intervene. Before things turn violent, however, Cyclops has them stand down. Everyone is under a lot of pressure right now, but fighting won't solve anything. 20 years ago, the X-Men stand with their memories recovered, and an insane scene playing out before them. Eric is using his powers at a time when he shouldn't even be aware of them, but they seem to activate naturally as a defense against Legion. This is all wrong. They have to act now before it is too late. Meanwhile, Xavier recovers from David's attack. He realizes this is the dawn of the Homo Superior that he dreamed of, although he couldn't have possibly imagined things would be so dramatic. Still new to his own powers, Xavier is surprised when Psylocke contacts him for help. He knocks out Gabrielle for her own safety and finds the young woman who will one day be his student. The sight renders him speechless. An Asian telepath with a British accent, a black giant absorbing mountains of energy, a being made of pure ice, and a woman he recognizes as a young girl who stole from him only a few weeks ago. Xavier imagined there could be others out there like him, but this is a lot to handle at once. Not wanting to interfere with the past events any more than they already have, the X-Men brush off inquiries into their own identities, and explain that Legion is here to kill Magnus. However, Xavier is able to use his telepathy to deduce they are from the future, and that David is his son. Meanwhile, the battle is being watched over by Apocalypse. He is so pleased. It is all beginning, though a decade earlier than his sinister associate predicted. At long last, it is time to bloom. The Order of Ascension begins now. May the strongest survive. Magnus is struggling against David. The boy is angry and cannot be reasoned with. While Eric is still very new to all of it, Legion is stronger than he's ever been before. Eric is also completely confused, understandably. While the X-Men explain to Xavier exactly what is going on, Eric collapses from the strain of the battle, and Storm is forced to catch the man mid-air. Frustrated, Iceman launches himself at David, freezing Legion in solid ice, down to the molecule. Bishop is shocked at this, not knowing that Bobby is quite powerful when he wants to be. However, Psylocke can detect David's thoughts are still active, and this fight is not over. David is able to telepathically knock everyone down before escaping from the ice. Finally, it's time. He will have his way. He did it. It's just him and Magneto now. David will fix it all. He's going to make the world so much better. Besides, how could it possibly get any worse? And all he has to do... Xavier's last action saves his friend, but at a terrible cost. For a moment, Charles gets a vision of all that could have been. The X-Men that almost were, but now, are gone. David realizes he has made a terrible mistake. He just undid his own life. He just ruined everything. The X-Men and David are wiped from existence in an instant, except for one man, Bishop, who is unaffected thanks to his unique physiology and history. Meanwhile, Magnus cradles his friend, shocked and touched by the noble deed. From that day on, things would never be the same. In the present, galaxy after galaxy is being crystallized and destroyed. There is little time left before the entire universe will shatter, and the Shi'ar can do nothing but stand by and watch. With things looking bad and nothing to do, Angel goes to talk with Beast. If the world is really ending, he wants Hank to know that he's always been a good friend. The best, really. Beast is at a loss of words, but one does come to mind. Thanks. The couples of the group, Rogue and Gambit, Jean and Scott, and Cable and Domino, all share some last moments with one another too. Jean and Scott run into Xavier, who says it's all out of their hands now. He wonders if he ever really made a difference in the world, and his two students reassure him that he made the X-Men, and if they are any indication of his work, then nobody can doubt the man's value. Charles feels much better and thanks his two students. The Summers then go to talk to Nathan and reveal something they've been hiding for some time. Cable is their son. He smirks at this, revealing he's known this fact for some time, but figured they would tell him when they were ready. They share a touching moment together where Cable expresses gratitude at being given a family in this time period, and he tells them he doesn't regret for a single moment being their son. With that, Charles gathers his friends and students before him, offering one final message of thanks, and one final goodbye. If this is really it, he will miss his X-Men. He was proud to know them all. It all began with 5 students, 5 colorful names, 5 yellow costumes, and 1 dream. Their ranks swelled. Some died, some married, some had kids. But no matter where they went or what they did, they always took the badge with them. That simple X. The X that bonded them together as a family. The X that drove them to the noblest of causes. The X that signified their dream of unity. And now, the dream that ends. And all that is left is the memory of what might have been. It is supposed to be raining in Seattle, but the world has been changed. As a man surveys the calling in the city, he dimly has a memory, the faint feeling of a name lost, but pays a little mind. He already knows everything is wrong. The man is a mutant, which is good because North America is no longer the domain of Homo sapien. Though he feels bad for the humans left behind, he has little time to dwell on them either. A young girl runs up to him, chased by an army known as the Infinites. Intent on exterminating all human life in the area, they attack, quickly deducing the man is a mutant like them. Luckily, help is quick to arrive. The X-Men appear, rescuing their fellow mutant, though they do not recognize him. The Infinites are defeated with a furious series of quick attacks that show the genocidal forces no mercy. Their leader manages to get the head of the X-Men, a powerful mutant known as Magneto, at gunpoint. But the Infinite is quickly flash-frozen and shattered by Iceman. Bobby Drake chastises Magneto for letting this attacker ambush him like that, but Eric pays it no mind, knowing he was perfectly safe, and only focuses on the destruction around him. The X-Men have lost much since the mutant apocalypse rose to power. Every day, the dream of Eric's long-dead friend Charles Xavier, one of peace between the human and mutant races, seems more and more impossible. Quicksilver is shocked to learn from Magneto's words that his father once believed in mutant supremacy, much like Apocalypse. But Eric explains that all changed when his best friend Charles was killed, under mysterious circumstances 20 years ago. As Magneto reflects on just how badly things have gotten, he is told the new mutant they encountered earlier is refusing to say anything. When Eric approaches the stranger, Bishop unmasks himself. For 20 years, this man has roamed the earth, saying nothing until this moment. For the second he sees Magneto, Bishop charges forward, furious, claiming this is all Eric's fault. Somehow, thanks to his nature as a time traveler, Bishop remembers the world, before the Macran crystal shattered. In an agitated and confused state, Bishop tries to explain this, but only manages to rant and rave at Magneto for a moment before he passes out. Unsure what to make of all of it, Magneto has his X-Men take Bishop with them back to their headquarters. Meanwhile, the Dark Beast, a mutant scientist under the employ of Apocalypse, performs experiments on his fellow mutant, a man who once went by the codename the Blob. When this tortured soul breaks free, the escaped mutant is easily subdued by Scott Summers, accompanied by his brother, Alex. Scott is enraged to see Dark Beast experimenting on Blob's genetics, as Apocalypse specifically agreed to a peace deal with the human race that prohibited such genetic experimentation. When Scott threatens to report this, Alex gets angry, pointing out he's the one in charge of security in this area, and that he will be the one to decide what should be reported. The two brothers argue until they are stopped by the man who raised them, Mr. Sinister. Sinister warns Beast not to continue these experiments, has Alex clean up the mess, and then leaves with Scott. As they go for a walk, Nathaniel ruefully explains to his adoptive son that he has to leave, as one of their own is experiencing a dangerous form of madness that threatens the fragile peace Apocalypse has established between the mutant and human race. Sinister warns Scott that he has sheltered the young man from much of the harsh realities of this world, and from here on out, Summers is going to have to figure out things on his own. This worries Cyclops, as does the sudden appearance of Sentinels flying overhead. They fly right past him and a building called Sanctuary, owned and operated by Warren Worthington, the mutant known as Angel. The young mutant has used his family's wealth to set up a safe haven for both mutants and humans. To his adoring patrons, he introduces a performer named Scarlet, before a subordinate of his named Karma informs the man that he has a guest. Gambit has come by with a request to meet Magneto. Angel initially denies having any ties to the X-Men, but Gambit knows better, and points out Angel still owes him a favor. So Warren agrees to help Gambit on the condition that Remy never return to heaven. After all, Angel is already in a precarious position with Apocalypse, and you never know who is listening in, even here in his own club. The X-Men return to Westchester County, home to well over a dozen mutants, some of whom have been buried here. This is a safe place for mutants who don't wish to serve Apocalypse, and is protected by a series of special cloaking devices. Magneto and Rogue greet their son, named Charles, and they put him to bed as it is getting late. When they are finished, they go find Bishop, still half insane, and demanding to know what happened to Charles Xavier. With no surviving telepath on the team any longer, Magneto instead has Rogue use her powers to learn more about the man. When they attempt this, Magneto experiences a psychic backlash of some form, seeing glimpses of the original timeline. The process is interrupted by the arrival of Gambit, who is furious to see Rogue being put at risk using her powers in such a way. Magneto quickly recovers from his vision, ignores Gambit's ranting, and tasks Nightcrawler with finding his own mother, so they can learn more about what he just saw. As Eric ponders all of this, he vows that no matter what happens, no matter what he learns or does going forward, he will not betray Charles's vision for the future. Elsewhere, Apocalypse summons his most trusted officers, his horsemen. Though one among them, Mikhail, fails to show up, Apocalypse tells the three present, Sinister, Abyss, and Apocalypse's own son, Holocaust, that he intends to strike out against humanity one last time, breaking his existing pact with them in the process. When Sinister brings up concerns of mutant survival in such a conflict, Apocalypse brushes it off, as he wants only the strongest and best among them to survive. While Holocaust gleefully works with his father to prepare for this final war, Sinister knows this will mean the end to his own plans. Long has Nathaniel Essex been working on his own scheme, and humanity needs to survive, at least for now, until those plans come to fruition. Intent on not letting Apocalypse wipe out humanity before that time, Sinister flees from Apocalypse's headquarters, becoming a fugitive while also having already leaked key information to two other mutants, Weapon X and Jean Grey. The two are currently operating in the ruins of London, where they meet with Moira Trask. Her and her husband, Bolivar, are both members of humanity's High Council, the last remaining form of legitimate leadership and official power for the human race. Jean and Logan deliver Sinister's information, while back in what was once America, Apocalypse orders Sinister be hunted down and held accountable for his betrayal. Yet even Insabanur is unaware, far out in space, an even greater danger barrels towards Earth. Spun from a far distant galaxy, crystals have begun devouring stars and systems, moving on an unrelenting path towards Sol. The crisis around the Macran crystal, having already completely rewritten reality, is far from over, and could very well destroy everything in the process. For mutants like Jonathan Starsmore, also known as Jono or Chamber, they are completely unaware of this danger, and much more focused on their day-to-day lives. Jono is not yet considered a full member of the X-Men, but is instead training with other young mutants like Paige Guthrie, also known as Husk, who he is romantically involved with, along with fellow mutants Mondo and Angelo Espinosa. Their teacher is Peter Rasputin, also known as Colossus. Peter joined the X-Men after fleeing from Russia, back when that country still existed before Apocalypse destroyed it, and he made his way over here after his brother Mikhail became a horseman of the Apocalypse. Because of all this, Colossus is a harsh and difficult teacher, though it should be noted that is very much required for the world Jonah and the others are growing up in. Kate, also known as Shadowcat, is their other teacher, and doesn't go any easier on the young mutants. On this day, a particularly brutal training session is interrupted by the sudden arrival of Magneto. Though technically part of the X-Men, the young mutants are carefully hidden away some distance from Westchester, so Eric is very unlikely to simply drop in for no reason. For many of the young mutants like Jono, it's their first time ever even seeing the famous leader of the team. Eric joins Colossus and Shadowcat for a meeting at their base. Called the Tomb, it is one of the last surviving structures in the Rocky Mountains following the rise of Apocalypse. Magneto takes the teachers to meet with Bishop and tells them about the alternate reality he has gleaned from this stranger's mind. Eric mentions that while he is currently verifying these claims of a changed timeline by using Gambit and Nightcrawler, he still needs Kate, Peter, and the other students procuring the means to time travel, especially if what they learn turns out to be true. This will be no easy task, as Apocalypse killed all known mutants with time-traveling abilities. But the hope is that since that time, someone out there has gotten new powers and has gained the ability to travel through time. Magneto has their supercomputer, called Know-It-All, scan for any possible traces of such powers being activated in recent years, even taking the risk of having the computer hack into Apocalypse's systems, which worries Colossus tremendously. If the Shadow King, another minion of Apocalypse, discovers this intrusion, he will destroy Know-It-All's artificial mind and attack the tomb. Magneto, well aware that an altered timeline could result in saving billions of lives, simply states it is worth the risk. Know-It-All quickly finds a number of results, but most mutants with these powers are dead or long missing, unlikely to be found. However, one match startles Colossus. Ileana Rasputin, his sister, someone who was erroneously reported dead years ago, is actually alive, living in what was once Portland. Increasingly certain that the world is not the way it should be, Magneto tells his core team of X-Men, consisting of Quicksilver, Iceman, Sabretooth, Nightcrawler, Morph, Storm, and Banshee, that he has come to believe the stranger Bishop and what the man claims. His followers are deeply skeptical of what this strange mutant says, and try to convince Magneto otherwise, but they are interrupted when a portal opens around them. Their friend Blink emerges from it with fellow mutant Sunfire behind her. They aren't supposed to directly teleport into their headquarters like this, as it could expose their concealed location, and this worries the X-Men. Sure enough, one of Apocalypse's men tries to follow them through Blink's portal, so Blink closes it around him. Sunfire explains that they had to make this risky return home to warn the X-Men that Apocalypse has ignored the agreement he made with the human race, and instead, Ensaberner's son, Holocaust, has personally resumed slaughtering humans across North America. Shiro, whose home of Japan was completely wiped out by Apocalypse, refuses to let this continue. In New York City, the Dark Mutant Overlord is informed by one of his underlings that they are closing in on the location of the X-Men, much to the delight of Ensabener. At the mansion, Rogue treats Sunfire when Gambit stops by to say goodbye. The Rogue has moved on. They both sense that as he goes on a mission for Magneto, this is the last time they will ever see each other again. So they share a heartfelt goodbye. Above them, Nightcrawler confronts Magneto about his plan to alter the timeline. Eric admits he has a lot of fear about this plan, but worries if they do nothing, this world is truly doomed. Though Nightcrawler, in this timeline a cold and vicious killer, has his doubts, he implicitly trusts Magneto more than anyone else, and puts his faith in his leader. In the X-Men's hangar, Quicksilver discovers Rogue, Blink, Sunfire, Sabretooth, and the mutant Wildchild as they all prepare to go and stop Holocaust on their own. Pietro is especially frustrated at this because the X-Men are on the eve of a planned evacuation of humans still living along North America's east coast. Rogue and the others will be needed for that mission. Morph and Sunfire both show up in the hangar, revealing they are going too. But Morph manages to lighten the mood and get Pietro to understand they can't prioritize the humans on the east coast over those being called in the west. Rogue admits to Quicksilver she couldn't bring herself to say goodbye to her husband Magneto, as it would imply she would never see him again. Promising to return, she and Pietro share a hug, and the team leaves. Observing this, Bishop approaches Quicksilver and asks why the X-Men are willing to sacrifice themselves for what he sees as a pretty futile effort. Pietro brusquely explains that this is their world and they will fight for it or die trying, regardless of what Bishop has to say. Still confused by his jumbled memories, Bishop still has enough sense of the original timeline to know that Professor Xavier would be very proud of these X-Men keeping hope alive in such dire circumstances. Far off, in a ruined city, a young 12-year-old mutant named Jubilee runs for her life. Apocalypse unleashed nuclear war on the world when she was only 6, and the young woman has known little else in the world other than the domain created in the fallout. Having stolen medical supplies, she is attacked and nearly overwhelmed by the Infinite Army, until she is rescued by 2 of her fellow team members, Sunspot and Hunk. They are all part of a group of rebels known as the Externals. They go to deliver the supplies to a safe house for humans, where they meet up with their human liaison, Lila Cheney, who will distribute their supplies and informs the trio that the leader of the Externals, Gambit, has returned. The 3 are stunned to find him waiting for the group with Magneto. This is unexpected to the Externals, as Remy had a major falling out with the X-Men and Eric over his love for Rogue. Gambit reveals he has set aside those differences and agreed to a mission on behalf of Eric, surprising the team even further. But Gambit has become convinced that the nature of his mission is more important than just about anything else. With Eric's guidance, they sneak through some old tunnels once used by a group called the Morlocks before Apocalypse took over. They find a door where, according to one of Magneto's sources, inside is an experimental vault full of valuable scientific artifacts held by Apocalypse. They do indeed find a vast array of technology, but also a group of Magi waiting for them. The Magi are elite officers in the Infinite Army, clones of the mutant Jamie Madrox. They are all genetically programmed with a religious devotion to Apocalypse, and thus attack the Externals on sight. After a quick fight, the mutants are able to destroy the Magi, and with the help of Magneto's contact, a human researcher named Peter Corbeau, they are able to determine the Macran crystal is currently in Shi'ar space. Magneto then reveals that Lila is actually a mutant, able to operate a unique machine stored here that will open a gateway to Shi'ar space. Lila herself was completely unaware of this, but Eric learned of such things after saving her from being a prisoner of Mr. Sinister years ago, who had been experimenting on Lila and had built this machine in the hopes that he might be able to use it on her one day. Lila is hooked up to the machine and quickly able to awaken her powers once exposed to a visor that shows her the stars of space. Just as she starts to open a portal to a Shi'ar world housing the crystal, the Infinite Army arrives. Magneto orders Remy and the Externals to guard Lila and go through the portal when it opens, while he holds off the forces of Apocalypse on his own. In a short time, Lila manages to open the portal and the Externals dive through, though one high-ranking Infinite officer manages to slip past Magneto and follow the team through the gateway. The portal closes, leaving Eric mired in grief and fear. His plan to restore the timeline relies on Gambit and his team getting that crystal, but there is little more he can do for them at this point, and only hopes they will succeed. He apologizes to Peter, knowing that Corbeau will be killed by Apocalypse over this when the scientist's betrayal is discovered. Peter is only one of a small amount of humans granted privileges in Apocalypse's domain that few others of his race enjoy. Corbeau bitterly dismisses these words, viewing Magneto with cynicism, and instead, to spite Apocalypse, he activates a self-destruct device within the vault, choosing to die here on his own terms. Magneto leaves the man to his fate. In London, the Human Council asks Weapon X and Jean Grey for assistance with a mission. The 2 are given an advanced Sentinel robot, which they ride to Apocalypse's seawall in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. This wall is designed to withstand thousands of Sentinels, allowing Apocalypse and his forces to ward off any attack from the surviving human race. The Sentinel, possessing new human technology, manages to get Jean and Logan onto a radar-controlled tower. The 2 humans leap onto the seawall and break into the tower, and inside they are attacked by a vicious, cybernetic, snake-like monster, one of many experimental creations by Mr. Sinister. Logan attacks it, but Jean separates the 2, scaring off the monster with her powers and insisting to her partner that they focus on the mission at hand, as they have a very limited window of time to complete their task. Meanwhile, Apocalypse's forces call for reinforcements, teleporting in Havoc. Alex Summers, viewing this as a trivial intrusion, is outraged he was put through the relatively risky process of teleportation, so he attacks the Infinites who summoned him before turning his attention to Logan and Jean. In spite of this, the two manage to take out the control center for this area of the seawall, escape Alex's attack, and return to the Sentinel. The giant machine is able to detach its own hands, which fly through the air, grab Havoc, and shove him back through the teleporter, sending Alex away while Logan and Jean are able to escape. With this part of the seawall now disabled, the two watch as a fleet of Sentinels move around them, heading to America's east coast to begin a planned evacuation of humans as part of the operation coordinated overseas with the X-Men. The sight of this gives Jean hope, though Logan warns her the evacuation still has a long way to go before it is complete. Apocalypse gets word of the seawall's partial collapse, while Cyclops informs the ruler that Mr. Sinister appears to have told the human race that Ansabanur plans to wipe them all out. Apocalypse is impressed that Sinister would have the gall to do such a thing, and Scott promises him that his forces are scouring North America in search of the traitor as they speak. The Great Mutant seems unconcerned about all of that, though, claiming to Scott that he has already taken steps himself to draw out Mr. Sinister. Dark Beast then contacts Apocalypse, informing him that Havoc returned from the seawall with one of the Sentinel hands fused to his body on a molecular level, due to the teleporter technology. While Alex will need some time to recover, he did tell them of Logan's presence at the seawall. Scott, long an enemy of Weapon X, is furious to hear this, while Apocalypse muses on what this all means. He suspects that they were the ones that delivered Mr. Sinister's information to the human leadership in Europe, and considers the consequences of such a leak. Indeed, at that very moment, the Human Council is considering what they should do with Sinister's data. They now have proof that Apocalypse has no intention to negotiate with the human race in good faith, merely biding his time until he can wipe them all out. They all agree they will need to strike out against Apocalypse first, which impresses Logan, but worries Jean. When the Council suggests they wipe out North America with nuclear weapons, Jean feels her fears are being confirmed. But for most of the humans, they have come to accept Apocalypse's kill or be killed mentality. As well, this would avenge the parts of the world Apocalypse himself has already destroyed with nuclear hellfire. Suddenly, a young female mutant named Magma attacks the Council. Apocalypse has no intention to allow the human race an attempt to retaliate against him now that they know Apocalypse will wipe them all out, so he sent Magma to kill them all. She blasts Brian Braddock of the Council with her fire powers before being impaled in the back by Weapon X. Dying, Magma taunts both Logan and the humans, saying that more of her will come to finish what she started. This only serves to encourage Brian to go even further with the human race's plans for nuclear war. He argues the Council should institute a policy of scorched earth. If Apocalypse is so intent on seizing the world for the mutant race, he can have it, but the human race will ensure it is a Pyrrhic victory. Apocalypse will be able to conquer nothing but radioactive dust. Logan supports Brian's decision and nihilistic attitude, feeling the human race is finally ready to stand up to Apocalypse. Jean, however, recognizes this for what it is, a descent into complete madness. In New York City, Cyclops and his forces confront a group of mutants. The escapees despair at the sight of Scott Summers, as he is considered one of the very best in Apocalypse's army, long having served as an elite member of Mr. Sinister's guard. As a high-ranking servant for a horseman of Apocalypse, Cyclops is well respected by his peers and deeply feared by his enemies. With this in mind, the escaped mutants scatter rather than fight Scott and his forces head-on, hoping that at least some of them will be able to get away. Cyclops and his troops, however, are able to efficiently and brutally take down every one of those fleeing. Only one woman, a Morlock named Artemis, manages to pin down Scott, but she is quickly killed by his now recovered brother, Alex Summers. Cyclops is annoyed that his sibling killed the woman, as he is confident he could have captured her alive. But Havoc is dismissive of this concern, accusing his brother of getting weak and soft in a world that does not tolerate such things. Over in Sinister's slave pens, the siblings Elizabeth and Samuel Guthrie pin down a human riot. Once they are finished, Sam, also known as Cannonball, threatens to punish the rioting humans, but Scott arrives and orders the man to stand down. This provokes an argument between the two, and when Scott walks away from it, Alex comments to Sam that they will just have to accept things like this while Scott is still in charge. As such, Havoc decides to visit Hank McCoy, the Dark Beast, who is currently reducing the mutants captured by the team earlier into raw genetic material. As McCoy talks of how this material will be used to breed a new batch of Infinites for Apocalypse's army, Havoc mentions that it is a shame these clones only live up to a year, before asking if Hank would obey Alex should anything happen to Scott. Beast, knowing full well that Alex intends to betray his brother, simply states he is happy to work for anyone that will allow him to continue his sadistic experiments in peace. Hank also has a warning for Alex that Sinister truly cares about Scott and won't take the death of Cyclops lightly. Elsewhere, Scott looks for Sinister but finds nothing. He encounters some colleagues named Jesse and Terrence Aronson, also known as the Bedlam Brothers, but turns down an invitation to join them on a trip to heaven. There, at the neutral nightclub hosted by Angel, Alex is greeted by the Bedlams and Warren Worthington. The club is attacked by a human named Henry Gyrich, one of the few remaining people attempting open rebellion against Apocalypse. Though Gyrich threatens to attack the people attending the club, the man is almost instantly defeated by the Bedlam Brothers. Alex then quietly slips away for a romantic encounter with the club's human singer, Scarlett McKenzie. On returning for the night, Jesse implies to Scott that Alex had an affair with the woman, and at the mere mention that Alex might be having sex with a human, he turns hostile. Jesse quickly stands down, stating he was only kidding, as such encounters between mutants and humans are outright illegal in Apocalypse's domain. Scott then has Alex and the Bedlams break into one of Sinister's labs with him, only to find that Mr. Sinister has destroyed his own facility in an effort to cover his own tracks. Realizing Sinister is truly gone, Alex is delighted that his opportunity to seize power from his own brother has finally come. Far away, Sinister destroys yet another secret lab, his plans already in motion. Later, a young man named Nate has dreams of waking up and discovering Cyclops while suffering from amnesia himself. Nate briefly sees Magneto and Bishop talking in the X-Mansion before waking up from this dream, comforted by his team of rebellious mutants known as the Outcasts. Nate is an extremely powerful mutant, and his dream caused his telekinesis to destroy the area around him. The Outcasts put on a show for some surviving humans, reciting A Midsummer's Night Dream. Thanks to Nate and his teammate Mastermind, a silent but powerful psychic, they are able to disguise their mutant nature from the human population so as to escape and avoid detection by those who serve Apocalypse. The leader of the Outcasts is a mutant called Forge, and he is concerned about Nate. As a young mutant with growing powers, Nate is eager to explore these new abilities and push his mind farther, but in doing so, he risks exposing them all to Apocalypse. Forge tells the young man that he believes he is powerful enough to rival Apocalypse himself one day, but is worried his protege will get himself killed before he is able to fully develop these abilities. Sure enough, at that very moment, the Shadow King informs Apocalypse that he can detect the growing powers of this young man. Overhearing this, Cyclops wonders if this new telepath will be of use to Summers and his own personal agenda. Apocalypse decides to task his servant Domino with putting together a team of hunters to find this new telepath and recruit him by force. If they refuse to serve Apocalypse, Domino is told to kill this young upstart. In a small Kansas town, Nate and Forge watch as the town is forcibly relocated. Apocalypse's soldiers, tasked with shipping these humans off, likely for live experimentation, show little mercy towards those they are capturing, and kill any who resist. As the humans are loaded onto the train, one of the outcasts, a human pterodactyl named Sauron, drops a bomb on the train tracks. The outcasts break the humans free, incurring the wrath of the Infinite Army, but Nate proves a powerful force against Apocalypse's men. One young woman among the humans, however, witnesses an Infinite sneaking up on Nate, and in a sudden activation of her own abilities, destroys the Infinite with a sonic scream. The woman passes out, so Nate grabs her and escapes with the rest of the outsiders. Later, as they leave, Forge berates Nate once again, as the young man used his powers recklessly in the process of freeing the humans. On the road, they are encountered by a man who introduces himself as Essex, and claims to be able to help the outsiders. Far off, in what remains of Detroit, a young woman named Switchback meets a man named Kane Marco, and travels with him, seeking a haven from the world of Apocalypse known as Avalon. Kane asks her about the outside world, aware of the dystopia created by Unforgiven, but ignorant of just how badly things are going. During their journey, Marco rambles about his dead brother, until finally he leads her to Avalon, a place hidden deep within the Antarctic. Back in America, Nightcrawler meets with Angel, having arranged travel to Avalon as well. A mutant named Destiny lives there and runs the place, and Magneto needs her in order to confirm Bishop's story of the altered timeline. The two mutants are barely able to contain their hostility towards one another, with Kurt viewing Warren as a traitor who works with Apocalypse, and Warren quick to point out Kirk's mother has killed many refugees seeking out Avalon for safety. In spite of this, Angel tells Nightcrawler he can find transport in an abandoned building that used to be owned by Tony Stark. At the X-Mansion, Magneto confers with Kurt's mother, Mystique. Raven has long served as a ferryman for those seeking Avalon as refuge. She refuses Magneto's request to go there with her son, though, and retrieve Destiny. Mystique has a history with the leader of Avalon and doesn't want to face her again, but agrees when Eric ruthlessly threatens to reveal her location to Apocalypse's forces. In New York City, Nightcrawler meets with a mutant named John Proudstar, and they witness an indigenous ceremony which Kurt despises. Nightcrawler had a bad history with the Christian church he grew up around, so much so that he rudely insults the ritual and those performing it. Proudstar retorts he is well aware of Kurt's mother, Raven Darkholme, and how she abuses and robs refugees. In response, Kurt grabs John's outstretched finger and teleports it a few feet away, severing the digit and ordering the man to take him to Avalon without any further talk of Mystique. Watching this conversation unfold, a young mutant woman named Danielle Moonstar leaves. She is accosted by an Infinite, and when the soldier makes a racist comment towards her, Moonstar immediately kills the clone. Entering a Madri church, Danielle is brought to Apocalypse, who is standing next to a tortured man they call Dead Man Wade. And Savanur warns Danny that she can't keep killing guards like that, especially since, at this point, he values their lives far more than hers. Danielle asks about Wade, and Apocalypse comments that the man is having another psychotic episode. Wade was forcibly given a healing factor in a crude human experimental program called Weapon X, and though it cured the man's cancer and made him a useful combat asset, the treatment badly affected the man's mind and appearance. Apocalypse seems to keep him around largely out of amusement, more than for the tortured experiments his scientists inflict on the man or his use in missions. Danielle informs Apocalypse of Nightcrawler's new mission, so Savanur orders his sadistic underling Damask to take Danielle and Wade, pursue Kurt Darkholme, and find this Avalon. Meanwhile, Kurt is brought to a submarine called Excalibur, used to quietly shuttle those fleeing Apocalypse out of New York City, and with hundreds of other refugees, he begins a long journey to Antarctica. In Avalon, Switchback is introduced to Destiny. When they touch hands, the woman receives a disturbing vision of the Apocalypse. In Boothbay Harbor, Maine, a young woman approaches the Magi and informs them of a group of humans moving through the area. The humans are attempting to escape out of Apocalypse's domain to the relative safety of Eurasia. Back at the X-Mansion, Bishop, finally regaining his senses, reflects on the situation. For 20 years, he wandered this world, confused and afflicted by the changed timeline. He still is not certain of how the world should be, only that these are X-Men unlike any he has ever encountered before. He watches them effectively take down an attacking Sentinel as part of a practice session, but they fall short of the team's goal of taking the robot out within a certain time window. These results discourage Quicksilver, as they will need to destroy these Sentinels in order to get the humans safely past the seawall defenses to Eurasia. With half the team gone out west, he isn't sure what to do. This frustrates two of the X-Men, Bobby Drake and Exodus, as they are trying to help the humans but can't get past the human-built machines. However, the Eurasian technology is limited and is unable to distinguish between friend or foe when it comes to mutants. Banshee reminds the team they will also have to keep Apocalypse's forces at bay during all of this too. But Bishop again tries to warn the gathered team when Magneto arrives that none of this really matters because of the altered timeline. Eric insists they focus on saving as many people as they can until Nightcrawler, Gambit, Peter, and Katja all complete their various missions that will verify Bishop's story and allow them to alter the timeline back to normal. Magneto then reveals the key device that will be used for this evacuation, devices that will disguise the team's mutant abilities. With that, Exodus teleports Quicksilver, Banshee, Dazzler, Iceman, and Storm to Maine. After they leave, Magneto worries that this use of Exodus's powers may corrupt him, as he had not told the young man of his ability to teleport until this point, out of fear of what will happen. He's taking this risk now, though, as he explains to Bishop, because there is no point in holding back any potential weapons in this fight if the timeline is indeed corrupted. The X-Men quickly fall in with the human refugees unnoticed, while Storm flies out into the Atlantic Ocean to take out a defense monitoring station used by Apocalypse to watch out for Sentinels. Storm manages to hit it with enough energy to just barely disable it long enough for Sentinels to destroy the tower entirely, and a fleet of the machines move into Apocalypse's domain, along with a much slower, massive cargo ship. The Sentinels arrive at the humans' location and detect mutant activity, blasting Iceman and severely injuring the X-Men. This alarms the team, who should be hidden from the attacking machines, but they realize instead that Apocalypse's own mutants have arrived, elite members of the Magi, known as the Brotherhood of Chaos. Years ago, everything was much simpler in comparison. Magneto led a group of mutants called the X-Men hidden in Eastern Europe, at a facility located within the legendary Wendigo Mountain. Though he and his students once lived peacefully among the human race, sensing the growing hostility among the much larger population, he moved the team here to gather in isolation. Here they trained their powers to learn and protect themselves from a world that wasn't ready to accept them for who they are. The students, on one particular day, consisting at the time of Storm, Iceman, Jean Grey, Colossus, and Magneto's own children, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, are all operating a program in what they call the Killing Zone, a simulated combat room that allowed the X-Men to practice their powers safely. Watching his students, Magneto was impressed by their progress, but even before the appearance of Apocalypse, he had a sense that they would need to be ready for much darker days. He was strict, therefore, and when Quicksilver and Iceman celebrate a victory, Magneto only ups the difficulty level of their next challenge, emphasizing the need for the team to adapt and survive. As they face this challenge with confidence, Eric decides that this is still not enough, so he took this opportunity to introduce them to the newest member of the X-Men, Logan, also called Weapon X. This new mutant proved effective against the Killing Room machines, but also immediately went into a berserker rage, forcing Magneto to intervene and pin the man down. With Eric's permission, Jean Grey then used her telepathy to bring the man to a calm. Jean passes out from the effort, as telepathy was still new to her before the fall, but she managed to succeed and the feat still impressed Logan, as most telepaths would not have survived the experience of delving into his own mind. As Logan settled in with the new team, on the other side of the world, a mysterious vessel flew overhead of New York City. Things were getting dim in the world of humanity at this time. Fear of mutants was reaching an all-time high, as rumors percolated of a powerful and long-lived mutant rising and attacking the human population. These fears became a reality on this day when the vessel projected a massive hologram of a woman named Kandra, who introduced herself as a herald of apocalypse. She proclaimed that the day of the strong and the fit had arrived. Watching this from Europe, Magneto knew he would have to act soon, but was then greeted by Mystique, who had managed to smuggle Rogue away from Apocalypse. She left, still an independent agent back then, and only having retrieved Rogue as part of a bargain with Magneto, but promised the young mutant that Eric could be trusted. Rogue struggled to connect with her fellow students at first on the team, as she feared touching them thanks to the nature of her powers. But her and Eric quickly made a connection when he promised to help her control her mutant abilities, and that she was with family now. That night, Apocalypse's 5 horsemen of the time, Sabretooth, War, Death, Kandra, and Gideon, made a raid on the American arsenal of nuclear weapons. They tore through the human defenses with ease, while Magneto watched on the other side of the world through his personal network of spy satellite footage. He summoned the X-Men, though left Scarlet Witch behind, insisting his daughter look after the other students while they were gone. Arriving in America, their craft was shot out of the sky, while back in Wundagore, the facility was attacked by one of Apocalypse's men, a mutant named Nemesis. Rogue squared off against this villain, while Wanda evacuated the younger students before joining her new colleague in a battle against their foe. Meanwhile, Gideon and Sabretooth managed to get to a control panel capable of launching America's nuclear arsenal. They contacted Apocalypse, and on his orders, Gideon prepared to launch strikes around the world. This shocked Sabretooth, who thought they were just taking control of the weapons as a bargaining chip against the humans. Apocalypse simply called Sabretooth gullible to think this, and had his other horsemen turn on Victor Creed. It was then that the X-Men arrived, leading to a battle between the two forces. Sabretooth still agreed to work on the side of Apocalypse, and after a brutal fight, Weapon X managed to paralyze Victor, albeit temporarily thanks to the latter's healing factor. Magneto also managed to outright kill Gideon and abort the nuclear launch, prompting Apocalypse to appear on the battlefield himself in order to collect his horsemen. And Sabanur tried to destroy the X-Men, but they were saved by Magneto. Though they knew they were victorious, he warned the others that this was only the beginning. Back home, however, things weren't so successful. The battle against Nemesis proved costly, and the Scarlet Witch had died in Rogue's arms. Years before losing his hand, Weapon X used to live in a settlement called Neo-Tokyo. He was looking after a young woman named Mariko, and as a result battled a gang of Yakuza in order to keep her safe. She insisted on continuing a crusade against Yakuza's virtual businesses, but Logan scolded her over this, and told the young woman to instead focus on continuing her education. Logan owed Mariko's father a lot from their days serving at war together, and felt compelled to help the man's daughter stay safe. This, however, frustrated a man called the Silver Samurai, Mariko's half-brother, who was supposed to be the one protecting her. The samurai, who also goes by Kenichiro, attacked Logan out of frustration, but Weapon X easily bested his opponent, though he ensured no harm came to Kenichiro in the process. Mariko commented that it would have been easier to kill the young man, but Logan simply stated that sometimes the easier paths generally are less righteous ones. Though privately he thinks to himself that sometimes making those right decisions can be very difficult to live with. For his failure to follow Apocalypse's orders, Victor Creed, also known as Sabretooth, was never treated with trust following the events in America, and eventually it led to him being held in prison during a calling in Los Angeles. Creed was held with another mutant named Wild Child, who also could not be controlled by Ansabanur. Though initially hostile to one another, Victor quickly established dominance over this feral mutant, and they were able to work together and escape. This proved a turning point for Sabretooth, leading to what he views as the greatest accomplishment in his life to date, joining Magneto and his X-Men with Wildchild at his side, as well as eventually serving as a father figure to a young mutant woman named Blink. Not too long after joining the X-Men, things reached a boiling point within the team. They were able to achieve a handful of successes along the way against Apocalypse, such as Magneto injuring his son, Nemesis, severely in revenge for the death of his daughter, leading to Nemesis being transformed into a new being known as Holocaust. However, overall, things were going poorly, and Apocalypse was successfully conquering North America, all while decimating human populations around the world. When Jean Grey was captured and held in a camp for mutants, Magneto chose to abandon her rather than risk the well-being of the rest of his team. Outraged, Logan went to save her on his own, though lost his hand in the process. On returning, a fight broke out between Weapon X and Magneto over this, with Logan and Jean ultimately deciding to leave the team entirely. This left Eric heartbroken to lose team members he valued so much, but Jean privately told him that she understood why Magneto did what he did and left her behind, and just felt as though Logan needed her more than the X-Men at this moment. Following this, in Spokane, Washington, Holocaust met with the Dark Beast's finest creation to date, a killing machine known as the Wolverine. They spoke of the X-Men and how they knew that Weapon X and Jean Grey had recently left the team. Well aware this would be weighing heavily on Magneto's mind, Holocaust decided it was time to further break down their enemies psychologically, and ordered Wolverine to kill Magneto's son Quicksilver before he would finally have revenge on Eric himself. At the time, the X-Men were operating in Colorado, where they rescued a group of innocent humans from some criminals. They worked to take the thugs down, but for weak criminals, the team struggled, aware that Magneto was distracted by the loss of Weapon X and Jean Grey, and it affected their usual outstanding performance. From the shadows, Wolverine empowers two humans with his mutant ability to give them physical strength and speed. On his orders, they attack Magneto, managing to use their new enhanced physiology to stab the leader of the X-Men. This forces the team to retreat, at which point Wolverine observes that the one closest to Magneto at the time was not Quicksilver, but either Rogue or Gambit. Reflecting on this, he decided to alter Holocaust's plan on the fly, and sought out more humans to use as pawns in his next attack. The X-Men returned to their headquarters, at the time located in the remote mountains of New Mexico, where Magneto was able to make a quick recovery. Eric reprimanded Gambit for ordering a retreat after he was injured. At this, Remy attempted to leave for a date with Rogue, but she insisted on staying behind to help Magneto. She tries to encourage the beleaguered leader of the X-Men, but little can console him, though they do share a romantic moment that leaves the young woman, still in an active relationship with Gambit at the time, feeling very uncomfortable. She left, and when she encountered Remy later, when he states he is willing to fully commit to a romance with her, she runs off at the offer, confused over her feelings, and leaving the young man dismayed. He goes to ask Magneto for advice, finding him training with the rest of the team, in spite of being still a little off from his earlier injury. Because of this, Eric speaks harshly to Gambit and lectures him when he interrupts the practice, but hears the man out when Remy insists on still speaking. With Magneto wrestling over his own feelings for Rogue, however, there was little he could do to console Gambit, barely stumbling out an answer before they are interrupted by the woman herself. At her request, she and Magneto go to speak in private for a moment, where he shows her that he discovered a way to use his powers so that he can safely touch the woman without triggering her abilities. Rogue is moved to tears at this gesture, but seeing it all unfold from a distance, Gambit is left enraged. He attacked Magneto on the spot, who easily warded off his student's blows. In this moment, Gambit lashed out at Rogue as well, blaming her behavior on residual guilt over Wanda's death. In response, she slapped him, and from a distance, Wolverine observed all of this, having tracked down the X-Men some time ago, and his target is made clear by the interaction. He and the augmented humans charged at the X-Men's headquarters, leading to a battle with the heroic mutants. The X-Men recognized that these attackers were stronger than the average human, but they were still able to handle things with their usual deft skill, no longer feeling their funk from earlier. However, in their newfound confidence, an unaware Magneto was attacked by Wolverine, who knocked the still recovering mutant down in a single blow. He prepared to kill Eric, only to be attacked by Gambit. In the ensuing battle, both Remy and Magneto are cornered by Wolverine, and given the choice between saving the two, Rogue decided to save Magneto, flying him to safety while a despondent Gambit is pummeled by Wolverine. The rest of the X-Men manage to take down the humans and turn on the mutant, leading to a legendary battle where, in spite of the team's best efforts, Apocalypse's servant comes out on top. It is only Gambit, who is able to recover from Wolverine's earlier attack, that was able to stop this menace, by using his mutant powers to charge part of Wolverine's armor with an explosive level of kinetic energy. This results in a chain reaction that sends Wolverine flying off into the horizon, but Remy was left heartbroken by the events of the day. He chose at this moment to leave the team, walking away from his relationship with Rogue and abandoning the X-Men entirely. In just a few years following these events, Saab-Banur had already conquered all of North America. In the rise of this new tyrant, a number of mutants joined his cause, and rose in prominence and power in exchange for their loyal service. Among them were brothers Scott and Alex Summers, all the while watched over by Apocalypse's most trusted servant. At the time, he and Hank McCoy, before the latter mutant was fully transformed into the Dark Beast, had discovered a mysterious space vessel, which they quietly obtained and began to examine in secret. On board this ship was a pilot named Christopher Summers, father of the Summers brothers, who had been stranded in space for some time. McCoy and Sinister chose to keep this discovery a secret from Chris's children, and instead experimented on the man for years, seeking to learn what his adventures across the universe did to his body. After 5 years of brutal treatment, Chris managed to engineer an escape, fleeing into the ruins of Manhattan. The man is taken in by a kind stranger named Joe Robertson, a former journalist that informed Summers on the events of the world that led to this dystopian state it is in. At the news of this escape, Cyclops witnessed Sinister's other elite troops being ordered to track down this fugitive, with him being left out of the picture. Though Sinister passed this off as a lesson in delegation, in truth, Nathaniel Essex did not want either of the Summers involved in rescuing their father, not wanting to risk them discovering the nature of their relation to him, as it is Mr. Sinister who raised the two Summers boys, and he didn't want to compromise this relationship. Sinister's troops were able to quickly track down the fugitive to the home of Joe Robertson, but only found the man dead. To their surprise, Robertson's corpse rose right in front of them, alarming the group and forcing Northstar to vaporize the body. Following Chris's trail further, they managed to find him and attack, forcing Summers to kill a mutant named Emplate and injure Northstar and Aurora while fleeing. Within half an hour, the Summers brothers discover the incident and decide to get involved, in spite of Sinister's orders. They track down Chris, who revealed his identity as their father. He tried to evacuate the Summers family years ago to Canada in the early days of Apocalypse's rise. In the process, Chris was abducted by aliens and was forced to abandon his children to spare them from the same fate. The Summers' parents were tortured by these extraterrestrials, who killed Catherine Summers, wife to Chris and mother to their children. Eventually, Christopher bonded with other captured aliens, and they managed to escape their captors. They became a rogue team called the Starjammers and got involved in intergalactic politics before Chris was finally able to make his way back to Earth. Back in their research lab, the now long transformed Dark Beast and Sinister discover a formerly captured mutant named Jean Grey has a uniquely compatible genetic pattern with Scott Summers. They prepare to create a new, artificially grown mutant with an untold level of power by combining these two genetics. But when Beast taunts Sinister over Chris Summers' escape, and likelihood of him being able to reveal the truth of what happened to him and his children, Sinister is thrown into a rage. He kicked out his subordinate and began to ponder on what might happen next. Unable to contact anyone, the Summers boys find themselves stuck in the area where they found their father. Scott found a number of dead bodies there and only one survivor, a human named Misty Knight. The woman despaired at the sight of her dead compatriot, her friend Colleen Wing. Suddenly, however, they are attacked by Colleen and the other dead humans, all risen from the dead, and transformed into a sinister alien parasitic race known as the Brood. These beings attacked relentlessly, eager to feast on their mutant victims, though seemed to give pause around Chris Summers. Soon overwhelmed by these scavengers, they were only rescued by Mr. Sinister. At the sight of his adoptive father, Scott got angry, furious about what happened to his biological father and Sinister's treachery. However, their argument is interrupted when Chris suddenly transforms into the Brood as well, revealing himself to be the source of the alien infestation on Earth. When his father attacks Mr. Sinister, Scott is forced to kill Christopher with a powerful optic blast. As he dies, the elder Summers apologizes to Scott, stating that the Brood consumed the entire Shi'ar Empire and infested him as well, though, with his death, Earth was left safe from the Brood, at least for the time. Scott, Alex, and Sinister all squabble over these revelations, and Summers' choice to kill Christopher, leaving all three emotionally distanced from one another, permanently. As a result, Alex stormed off, ready to kill his brother, while Scott brushed off Sinister's attempt at reconciliation. Instead, Summers begins reflecting on something his father said to him, that this was never the life intended for Scott Summers. He realized in this moment that his father gave him an incredible, tremendous gift before he died, the opportunity to start changing for the better. In the time that followed his initial rise, Apocalypse unleashed a full eugenics war against the human population. The death toll climbed to staggering levels that left the human race and the X-Men, who tried in vain to protect them, broken and defenseless. In a bid to rescue outspoken critic of Apocalypse Robert Kelly from an ancient temple hidden away in Central America, Magneto was nearly killed by two villains serving in Sabanur, Diablo and the Absorbing Man. The man once known as Eric Leshner was nearly overwhelmed by this attack, only saved at last minute with the aid of Rogue and Nightcrawler. As the group settled down with a very grateful Robert Kelly, Nightwing informs Eric that Kurt's mother, Mystique, has discovered the location of Apocalypse. Shortly after the encounter with his father, Scott Summers was dispatched to a giant vessel named simply the Ship. Built millennia ago by an unknown race of aliens, it was discovered by Apocalypse and used as a base of operations by one of his horsemen, that of Death. Now plagued with thoughts of doubt, Cyclops began questioning everything he was once raised to believe. He witnessed Death torture the recently captured Sunfire. Cyclops tells Death he has come here to escort a transport on behalf of Apocalypse to the Dark Beast, and Death, aware of this assignment, tells Summers he will simply have to be patient while things are readied for this mission. Scott notes that Sabanur has recently been conspicuously absent from his own leadership regime. He's been seeing none of even his closest of followers, and Scott is growing increasingly suspicious. The reason for this absence is known by only a select few, and those responsible for it. The X-Men recently managed to score a major and rare moment of victory against Apocalypse that could very well change the tide of the entire eugenics war. During a recent battle, they managed to injure Apocalypse himself, and the despotic leader had gone into hiding to recover. Sabanur was hidden aboard the ship, which itself is carefully concealed within a hidden location called the Blue Area of the Moon. Apocalypse discovered this vessel located here a long time ago, and has used its many resources and advanced technology for his own purposes, granting him many of the advantages he has long enjoyed during this war against the human race. Working from here, Death discovered the Terrigen Mist, an ancient substance capable of bestowing incredible abilities on a select few. With Apocalypse incapacitated and this new line of research empowering the Horsemen, Death decided to take this opportunity to seize Apocalypse's entire domain, declaring as such to Scott Summers. As the X-Men prepared to work with a new recruit named Blink to mount an attack on the ship, in an effort to finish off Apocalypse once and for all, Scott decided to side against Death in this attempted coup and began to formulate his own ideas. Soon after, the X-Men arrived and battled against Death, who used an army composed of the Inhuman royal family, who Death had discovered and been experimenting on for some time. The battle proved unusually hazardous against the X-Men, as the Inhumans bolstered a staggering level of superpowers that were completely new and unknown to this team. As such, Death and his enslaved experiments were able to take down and capture the entire team with relative ease. Only Blink managed to escape, and so Cyclops quietly approached her so that they might join forces. Together, they attacked Death and freed the X-Men. Summers also broke out Starfire, and with some words of encouragement from Cyclops, Blink was able to safely teleport her rescuer away before Death was killed by Shiro, who went on a rampage and obliterated the entire ship. Luckily, the X-Men, Shiro included, were able to flee back to Earth thanks to Blink's abilities just before the ship was destroyed. They remark on the fact that they were saved by Scott Summers, of all people, and Eric could sense there was some nobility growing within one of their deadliest enemies. It left Magneto feeling unusually hopeful that perhaps one day, even Cyclops might join with them in the fight against the tyranny of Apocalypse. As for Colossus, the man began to feel numb in the face of this overwhelming number of dead. He grew up with his brother Mikhail in Russia, until the Rasputin brother was captured by Apocalypse and turned into a horseman. Since then, Pyotr has been fighting at the side of the X-Men, but as the years wore on, he began to shut down in response to the endless trauma he witnessed in the age of Apocalypse. It got to a breaking point during a battle in the ruins of Wakanda. The X-Men were dispatched to destroy a group of Sentinel prototypes built in the last days of this desperate nation's life as it attempted to stop Apocalypse before the advanced country was completely wiped out. In spite of the incredible danger he and his friends were in during this fight, Colossus simply sat down and refused to even engage in the enemy. When confronted about this behavior later by Magneto, Colossus apologized for endangering the others, but said he had simply given up. This war had finally beaten his spirit, and there was little the others could say or do to change that. Rasputin could only find comfort and support in the arms of his wife, Catherine Pride, and she encouraged him to leave the X-Men and start a family with her, away from all of this conflict, with both feeling they contributed more than enough by this time. Magneto, overhearing all of this, agreed and decided to offer the two a compromise of sorts, allowing the couple to step down from active duty as X-Men and move to a place of safety, where they would be tasked with training the next generation of mutants with surviving this hostile, unbearable war. The couple both took Magneto up on his offer, and from that, a new mutant school was born. But unlike the one that Charles Xavier once dreamed of, this would be focused on the one thing of value in Apocalypse's realm: survival. In an abandoned orphanage, Mr. Sinister began the final phases of an ambitious new experiment. The man who once called himself Nathaniel Essex had been quietly working on this project for years, stealing resources where he could from Apocalypse's forces, all in the name of this new line of research. He succeeded at his goal. Using the DNA strands of Jean Grey and Scott Summers, he created a new mutant with an astonishing level of potential. Sinister named the child Nathaniel Grey, after both himself and the boy's biological mother. The clone, put through a rapid aging process, wandered off while Sinister fielded a call from the Dark Beast. Using his innate telepathic abilities, the young Nathan began to learn of the outside world by instinctively drawing on the residual psychic energies left by a handful of children that grew up in this facility. Sinister found the boy quickly, and briefly flew into a rage over this disappearance. But he calmed down and began to teach the boy about the current state of the world, briefing him on the nature of Apocalypse, the seawall, the infinite army, and the many, many dangers that lay outside. Sinister, calling the boy his son, said he would be safe as long as he remained here. He promised Gray that things weren't always like this, and they wouldn't always be either. While speaking on these matters, however, a curious Nathan projected their consciousnesses to a human extinction pen miles away, where, in spite of them only being there in astral form, Gray was even able to physically stop an infinite in its tracks. A shocked Sinister quickly used a small disruptor charge to bring their minds back to Omaha, leaving Nathan puzzled and Mr. Sinister utterly terrified at the power of this new child. With that, Sinister had a teddy bear created for the boy, and quickly put him to rest in a special suspension chamber, telling him that the world was way too dangerous for him to live at the moment, and he would have to artificially grow within this tube for some time. As the chamber sealed, Sinister was left reeling from this encounter. Perhaps the thing that worried him the most was that the boy had already grown a mind and will of his own, and Sinister found himself completely unable to control what information the clone could access at any given moment, thanks to the child's vast telepathic abilities. We realized he had made some miscalculations in that regard. Nothing, not even Nathan himself, would ever be able to contain this level of power long term. And so Sinister set on a new project, a failsafe just in case everything goes wrong. Born Clarice Ferguson, the young mutant moved from the Bahamas to the United States at only the age of 4. Apocalypse invaded America not long after that, at which point Clarice witnessed the brutal death of her parents, and was sent to the death camp known as the Pens, where she spent most of her childhood. Eventually, Blink was rescued by Sabretooth and joined with the X-Men. With her ability to teleport from one location to another in a mere instant, Clarice soon found a home on the team, with her skill set proving immensely valuable to the Freedom Fighters. At one point in this new role, Blink once found herself on a mission where she foiled a dangerous alien experiment being conducted by the sinister Dark Beast. A week later, though the mission was successful, Magneto chastised her for not following orders during the mission. This quickly turned into a heated argument, where Eric threatened to kick the young woman off the team entirely, and even struck her down with his powers when she argued back at him. Storming off, she witnessed Holocaust, another of Apocalypse's acolytes, being attacked by a group of aliens from a strange realm called the Negative Zone, and pondered the idea of forming an alliance with these extraterrestrials. When she is spotted by the son of Apocalypse, Blink had no choice but to take a chance and leap through the portal into this new dimension. The woman lost consciousness as a result, waking up in the Negative Zone with a gun pointed at her head, and the young mutant's memories completely wiped out. Instinctively, and still possessing the finely honed combat skills taught to her by Sabretooth, she struggled against the gunman, who also proved to be a very capable fighter. After a deadly conflict, the two found themselves at a stalemate, and a knife at one another's throat. Blink offered they talk the situation out rather than just keep trying to kill each other, much to her attacker's relief, and he proceeds to save her from a deadly event called the Lava Cloak. They escape on the man's mount, a blind creature called the Ferrocat that travels through space using a sense of sonar and smell. And on this beast, the two begin to travel through one of the calmer regions of the Negative Zone. The man introduces himself as Amor, while Blink explains the nature of her amnesia. From what little she can remember, she only knows she is not from this place. Amor can tell she is indeed from somewhere other than the Negative Zone, and tells her he is plagued by visions of Annihilus, the former ruler of this realm. The once great emperor of this place had long fallen to a group of blue-clad warriors. Blink expresses relief that such a being is no longer around, but Amor seems oddly perturbed by his own story, explaining that something much worse has taken the tyrant's place. They find a group of villagers being attacked by the forces of Blastar, a powerful conqueror that has sought to replace Annihilus. The attacking soldiers remind Blink faintly of her home world, while her and Amor are able to subdue them. Clarice is briefly distracted by a memory of Weapon X, nearly killed because of it were it not for the timely intervention of Amor with his energy weapon. Focusing back on the battle, Blink uses her powers for the first time in front of her companion, shocking the man, though the young woman can explain little of her own nature. Still, he and the villagers are grateful for her help. They explain to Blink that Blastar wants to use the armies of the Negative Zone to invade Earth, while Amor vows to stand up to this despot and reclaim the realm in the name of Annihilus. Some part of Clarice recognizes the name Earth, and she feels compelled to assist these people because of it, recognizing the danger it represents to her family on a subconscious level. Joining up with this new rebellion, Blink quickly found herself integrated into this new society, once again becoming a rebel against tyranny, just as she had in her home world. She began helping in a small-scale operation against the forces of Blastar, while starting a romantic relationship with Amor, but still couldn't help but feel as though something was wrong with the whole situation. As the group got more bold, they raided a settlement where they found a number of captives and abused children. This stirs memories within Blink of growing up on Earth in the pens with another young mutant named Ilyana Rasputin. The girls were horribly treated by their gruesome captor, one of Apocalypse's minions named Sugarman. Such memories were extremely disturbing for the young mutant, and Amor had to help her recover. Over the course of 4 days, this brought the two closer together, leading to them declaring their love for each other. However, it was after those days spent together in relative peace that they were suddenly captured, and brought face to face with Blastar, surrounded by a stadium full of his followers. After tormenting Blink a little bit, Blastar revealed something that devastated Clarice on a deep level. Amor had actually been Annihilus all along. The two were then thrown in a prison where Amor explained that he had no memory of his past life as Annihilus, but apologized to her just the same. He insisted he must have reverted to this form after being defeated when he was Annihilus, but swore he has been changed forever thanks to his time spent with Blink. Though Clarice was skeptical at first, Blastar later confirmed everything Amor had said was true. Sometime later, the villain transported his armies and Amor on a warpath towards Earth. In the meantime, Blink manages to restore her memories, escape from the prison, and retrieve a quiver of crystals she uses as weapons with the X-Men. With a new understanding of herself, she manages to free Amor, destroy one of Blastar's main weapons, and retreat back to her home world. The effort brings an end to the intended invasion of Earth, while Amor is changed back into Annihilus, though the experience does seem to have changed the tyrant ever so slightly. Returning home, Blink continued serving with the X-Men. Months later, when the world was about to come to an end in nuclear fire and a restoration of the original timeline, Blink despairs, her spirit finally beaten and broken. A portal opens around the young woman, and she finds herself in yet another world, at which point Clarice first meets another exile. Meanwhile, at another point in this alternate timeline, Nate Gray once returned from the restored timeline, having taken refuge there under similar circumstances. He remembers his home growing up in the Age of Apocalypse, but now has a much more developed sense of his own powers. The X-Man was alarmed to find reality shifting around him, altering between the original timeline and his much darker home as he passed through strange energy waves that altered everything around him. One minute, the seawall would dominate the landscape of the Atlantic Ocean, the next, it would be gone. X-Men traveled to Genosha, confused by these events, where, in the Prime timeline, you found another refugee from the Age of Apocalypse, Sugarman, having partnered with the government here so that he could conduct experiments with the goal of returning to the Age of Apocalypse timeline. Nate confronts what is now a familiar foe and attacks both Sugarman and a number of Genoshan military forces. Neither are much of a challenge to one as powerful as X-Man, so Sugarman activates his own portal, drawing energy out of Nate and using it so that he can return to the Age of Apocalypse. Refusing to allow this, Nate follows, only to nearly drown in the waters below Niagara Falls. He is rescued by Magneto, who introduces himself, already knowing of Nate, because Eric is accompanied by Forge, who X-Man is delighted to see and embraces warmly. Based on Forge still possessing both of his eyes, Nate realizes he arrived in an earlier period of the Age of Apocalypse timeline, before X-Men was ever originally active. Forge, however, knows all of this already, stating Nate has already explained this to him once before, or at least another version of him, from a different time period. Meanwhile, above the falls, Sugar Man delights in his return, revealing that in the weeks since coming back to this world, he has engineered a new strain of plague that should be able to wipe out all of humanity. He even has a vaccine so he can pick and choose exactly who lives and dies. Aware that this timeline, one way or another, is most certainly doomed, Sugar Man has bigger plans than this world, and intends to leave back into the Prime timeline with this new plague. Following the instructions of Nate from another timeline, Magneto, Forge, and X-Men all wait until the next day, at which point they are to attack Sugar Man's headquarters. That night, X-Men considers the possibility of staying here in this time period. This early, at the dawn of the Age of Apocalypse, he could do a lot to change things for the better. At Sugar Man's lab, Morph, having infiltrated the facility disguised as a research assistant, turns on Sugar Man in an effort to save another mutant named Jason Weingart. They are attacked by Sugar Man and his minions, forcing Magneto, Eric, and Forge to spring into action. The 5 mutants are able to work together and defeat Sugar Man, laying waste to his lab, but he manages to release the plague. With a mighty use of his powers, Nate is able to contain the virus, pulling it out of the waters around Niagara Falls, though the process strains him severely. Once finished, Forge then reveals he had created a portal to return Nate Gray and Sugar Man back to the restored timeline. Though Nate is reluctant to comply with this plan, Forge insists it's what they have to do. Firmly believing the Prime timeline is far better than this one, basically viewing X-Men as family, he wants what's best for Nate. The young mutant tries to resist, so Forge is forced to trick the boy using an illusion of Magneto attacking, making the young man return home as they say goodbye to each other one last time. Back in the Prime timeline, X-Men vows to find the Forge of this world and reunite to the closest thing he has to a father. Out east, on the coast of Maine, one of the Magi among Apocalypse's forces announces to the gathered X-Men and the human refugees that this evacuation is to stop at once. The corrupt priests reveal that they have co-opted the Sentinel programming, and the robots will now turn on the X-Men. On Banshee's orders, the mutant Exodus strikes out, and he is eager to get revenge against the Magi, who tortured him before he was found by Magneto. The X-Men and mutants brought by the Magi, called the Brotherhood of Mutants, all spring into action, battling one another. A shapeshifter named Carlisle briefly turns into Quicksilver's dead sister, Wanda Maximoff, distracting the X-Men's leader long enough for the Magi to stab him before he is rescued by Dazzler. It was at this point the Sentinels strike out, indeed reprogrammed by the Brotherhood to do so. Storm, not wanting to destroy their only means of evacuation, as the X-Men still hope to use them, manages to temporarily disable these machines with an electric pulse. The team regroup as Iceman reforms himself from his earlier injury. Banshee, however, in pursuit of the Mantri, Carlisle finds him dead, killed by Apocalypse's new horseman of death, Abyss, who executed his underling for failing to disrupt the evacuation completely. The brutal horseman reveals he is able to contain people within an alternate dimension, all contained in his own body, and he shows he has a kidnapped human teenager inside. Demanding Banshee bring him Magneto's son, Abyss threatens to otherwise kill the young man, and then unleashes a powerful psionic tremor of fear that disables every human in the area. Banshee runs off and quickly finds the others, where he explains the situation. Pietro Maximoff, son of Magneto, is not afraid of this, and decides to approach Abyss alone. The X-Men are tasked with restoring the Sentinels back to normal, but after a brief argument, he agrees to allow Storm to come along with him. They find Abyss, and Storm is able to get a hold of the boy within, but the Horseman attacks. Quicksilver manages to knock the villain down, and using his super speed, forcefully pushes Abyss into his own internal dimension, leading to what appears to be a particularly gruesome experience. The three rush back to the Sentinels, where the young boy is reunited with his family, and the massive machines of death are successfully reprogrammed. As the evacuation begins, the X-Men allow themselves a glimmer of hope for the future. In the streets of Chicago, Rogue, Morph, Sunfire, Sabretooth, Wildchild, and Blink try to stop the villain Holocaust from wiping out the local human population. Badly traumatized by his time in captivity, Shiro begins to unravel, using his fire powers recklessly while openly challenging the son of Apocalypse. Rogue is forced to intervene, using her powers to knock Sunfire unconscious. She is nearly overwhelmed by Shiro's memories and trauma of recent events. Morph quickly saves the two and gets them moving, while the team regroups as Holocaust arrives on the scene. Back in Westchester, Magneto puts his son to bed, and he speaks to Bishop. Acknowledging that his child may never be born if they restore the original timeline, he confesses to Bishop he's not sure he can make this sacrifice. He asks for one night alone with his son, knowing it might be their very last. In Manhattan, apocalypse rages. Abyss has failed to prevent the Sentinels from beginning a mass evacuation in Maine. The Tyrant did receive good news from one of his underlings, though. They have recently found the hidden Westchester Manor. Apocalypse decides to handle this matter personally. Meanwhile, Sabretooth asks to be teleported to the front lines with Wildchild. Against Rogue's orders, Blink acquiesces, with all parties aware Victor is essentially sacrificing himself to buy more time for the others. Holocaust confronts Victor and his feral companion, revealing that the Infinite Processing Plant, a genetic engineering facility used to make Apocalypse's army, is just north of this city, which is where they are sending all the bodies of the humans killed here for material processing. Wildchild takes off to inform the others, while Sabretooth attacks. Holocaust, however, is powerful, and was once considered heir to Apocalypse for a reason. He is able to injure Sabretooth by collapsing some rubble on the Freedom Fighter, causing major internal bleeding. With the last of his strength, Victor manages to tear apart Holocaust's helm, and both foes collapse to the ground. Unfortunately, this heroic effort was in vain, and Holocaust quickly recovers from the devastating blow. Far, far away, out on a world unfamiliar to them, Gambit and the Externals take stock of their surroundings, while Lila collapses from the strain of transporting them to this alien world. The group are suddenly accosted by the Imperial Guard, royal protectors of the Shi'ar Imperium, who demand the mutants surrender themselves at once. To make matters worse, a low-level Apocalypse enforcer named Richter has followed them to this strange new world. Gambit orders the Externals to flee, while Richter surrenders to the gathered Imperial Guard. The other fleeing mutants are pursued by the Shi'ar, who attack them with a tremendous show of force. Badly outnumbered, Strong Guy stays behind to buy the others some time by knocking the head of the guard, a being known as Gladiator, miles away with a devastating blow. The mutants, known as the Externals, use this opportunity to go into hiding within an alien forest, and the Imperial Guard loses track of them, much to Gladiator's outrage. He has the guard contact the Shi'ar High Command and ask them to send for telepaths, but one of the guard, a woman named Oracle, suggests they use Richter to find the Externals instead. Meanwhile, the fugitive mutants are suddenly trapped by a tree. A stranger named Jonath approaches them, explaining that this entire planet is sentient, and called them here during their travel through Lila's portal. During this time, Richter shows the guard his tracking device that will allow them to find Gambit and the others, even having a chance to demonstrate his powers over tectonic energy when the group threatens him. Oracle scans Richter's mind to get a better sense of the situation. She is disturbed to learn this alien world of Earth is fated to be destroyed by the Macran crystal, just like countless others that have been mysteriously wiped out in recent events. Back with Gambit, Jonath explains he was once a deadly assassin working for the Shi'ar, until he failed to protect the Emperor and was banished to this world. While he and his colleagues found peace farming here, the new Emperor, Deken, has fallen into madness. He discovered the Macran crystal and has been using it to seize power over the Shi'ar against the wishes of his sister, Deathbird, all after having murdered his other sister, Lilandra. Such aggressive use of the crystal has triggered yet another catastrophic event that is building in scale and can very well wipe out all of reality. Learning this planet is doomed to become crystallized by this artifact, Jubilee begins to panic, but Jonas insists this was all meant to be. The Externals are to witness what is coming so that they might make things right back on Earth. Suddenly, the Imperial Guard, with Richter at his side, arrives and they all attack in force. A chaotic battle erupts when suddenly, the Macran crystal's reality-destroying wave approaches. With Lila unable to get them out of here, and reality disintegrating all around them, all seems lost, and Gambit watches the Externals begin to vanish into nothingness. But Gambit is misreading the situation. The Starjammers, a group of space pirates, have teleported the Externals onto their ship, just as the entire planet was destroyed, taking most of the Guard and Jonath's people along with it. although they do detect 2 other survivors flying away from that world before it was destroyed. On board this ship, Deathbird, sister to Lilandra and Emperor Decan, explains that this was the Macran crystal itself that orchestrated these events, all to show Gambit what is happening. Realizing how serious and important his mission truly is, that everything Bishop and Magneto had said was actually true, Remy vows to save the universe, no matter the cost. Back on Earth, in the former city of Seattle, a massive nuclear power plant rumbles on. This place is the power source for all of Apocalypse's America, and, as Colossus has recently learned, is where his sister, Ileana Rasputin, has been held for years. He watches this place with his partner Shadowcat, and they already have a plan in motion to sneak in, coordinating with their students in an effort to rescue his sister. Shadowcat is nervous about all of this, as the plan is quite risky and relies on the word of a strange new mutant named Bishop, a person they don't know anything about. As they argue about it, Katya is suddenly grabbed by Undercloak, one of the guards in this area that works for the Sugar Man, who controls this plant on behalf of Apocalypse. They quickly kill this shadowy figure and decide it is time to rush in. Within the city, their students Paige Guthrie and Vincente manage to assassinate the head of the plant, a mutant named Quietus, and begin to go through his files. They then disguise themselves as the now dead Quietus and rendezvous with 2 other students, as everyone makes their way inside the nuclear plant. Having made contact with the young mutant named Switchback, Destiny is overwhelmed by a vision of her home Avalon being wiped out. Back in America, Ghost Dance is annihilated by the Magi. In between these 2 points across the world, making their way to Avalon on an ancient submarine, Kurt and a number of refugees struggle to survive, unaware of these events at their destination and departure point. Their worn-down vessel's air filtration systems have failed, and so the new crew is forced to come up to the surface early. They spot a nearby ship captained by a woman named Callisto and flag it down for help, enlisting her aid in cutting their way through a part of the submarine in order to free some refugees after some electronic doors failed to open. By the time they do so, Kurt, who was among these trapped mutants, flees, leaving the refugees behind reluctantly as he lacked the strength to take any with him using his teleportation powers. High above the ship, Damas grows impatient after Danny Moonstar refuses to stop torturing Wade Wilson, so she brutally murders Danny on the spot. During this time, Callisto tricks the refugees into going on her ship, ostensibly to take them the rest of the way to Avalon. Instead, she seizes all their valuables and drops the helpless outcasts into the ocean. Kurt, not realizing what happened until it was too late, and far too weak to resist the frigid waters, could only watch on in horror. Nightcrawler decides to stow away on Callisto's ship for some time until the pirates accidentally drift into an area called an atrocity zone, small islands in the Atlantic Ocean that Apocalypse uses to dump extra bodies spawned out of his terrible regime. Here, Nightcrawler begins wiping out Callisto's crew, exacting revenge on their actions, quickly leading to a standoff with the cold-hearted captain. Just then, Mystique appears on the scene, having flown in via an aircraft vessel. Back in New York, a number of prisoners attempt a desperate escape from the custody of Mr. Sinister. They encounter a vision of Magneto, who saves the 2, but doesn't recognize a young woman with green hair. Magneto leaves her behind and is unaware this hopeless prisoner is actually Eric's own daughter, known in another time as Polaris. Later, Cyclops, Havoc, and Apocalypse all discuss Sinister's betrayal. Apocalypse had expected his horsemen would eventually turn on them, knowing this was always in the villain's nature, but is hardly worried about Sinister either, as he doesn't consider the man a threat whatsoever. Scott tries to warn Apocalypse that Sinister should not be underestimated, and admiring how the man will bravely speak his mind in the face of such a powerful tyrant, Apocalypse offers Cyclops the position of horseman to take Sinister's place. This makes Alex overwhelmingly jealous, whose mood is only worsened when he learns of the escaped prisoners. He and his subordinates interrogate Lorna violently, and though she lashes out briefly with her powers over magnetism, she tells them little of the escape other than seeing Magneto. Alex is told by the Guthries that Lorna's DNA does not actually match Magneto's, and insists the young woman is simply deluded about being the daughter of Magneto. Havoc decides to turn Dane over to Beast, who explains that Lorna believes all this after her parents were killed early in Apocalypse's callings. Meanwhile, Scott investigates the disappearance of Mr. Sinister with the Bedlam brothers. They are greeted by Angel, who is worried about the impending possible war with the humans in Europe. Scott then returns to the Beast and puts a stop to his torture of Lorna, worried it could provoke the humans due to existing agreements banning genetic experimentation. Beast points out that the negotiations made with the human race are just a stall tactic by Apocalypse, and he will never maintain such a truce with their kind. Hank refuses on these grounds to stop his experimentation on Lorna, so Cyclops uses his optic blast to destroy Beast's equipment and orders Lorna be returned to the pens. From the perspective of Dane, however, she hallucinates being saved by Magneto. That night, Cyclops sneaks the young woman out of prison, attacking Northstar and Aurora when he encounters them, and he successfully manages to smuggle Lorna out of the ruined city. This is witnessed by Havoc, who gleefully realizes it is finally time to make a move against his brother. Elsewhere, Domino and Grizzly dispatch a rogue mutant. They and Caliban, another follower of Apocalypse, all seek an unknown telepath recently detected in this area. Unknown to them, their target is Nathaniel Gray, a powerful mutant currently being trained by Forge, in the hopes that his unique abilities can be honed such that they could actually be capable of standing up to Apocalypse himself. Their friends, Brute and Mastermind, watch on, with the recently rescued Teresa, who has taken up the mutant name of Sonic. Nate gets frustrated by the training, as Forge is currently focusing on the young man being able to fight without relying on his powers. The more experienced mutant knows they should be expecting anything when it comes to battling Apocalypse, and thus Nate shouldn't be entirely reliant on his tremendous abilities. Nevertheless, a frustrated Gray storms off and abruptly brings the training session to an end. He talks this over with Teresa and his new other friend, Essex. This once stranger claims to have been a former bioengineer working for Apocalypse, but now travels with this group. Nate has telepathically scanned Essex himself and thus believes his story, but the others struggle to trust this new stranger. In contrast to Forge, Essex is quite interested in Nate's powers and suggests they focus on training them. On his advice, Nate Gray soon realizes he can use his telekinesis to fly in the air. At this sight, the former bioengineer begins to behave strangely as he and Sonic watch the boy use his powers to fly, only for Nate to crash into the ground, injuring himself. Essex suggests they keep this incident to themselves, as Forge doesn't want Nate training on his own, and dazed from the fall, the boy groggily accepts this notion. Later, at a meeting, Essex suggests to Forge's group that they target a valuable research lab, going on the offensive against Apocalypse. Forge reluctantly agrees with this notion, but insists they only go out to scout it at first. During the meeting, Brute can't help but think Essex looks vividly familiar. At the research center, Nate witnesses a number of atrocities and is disgusted by what he sees, though it does stir something within the boy's memories too. As they infiltrate the base, Essex explains this is the site of a grisly project kept hidden from the outside world, that is intent on extracting the bone marrow of humans en masse for the benefit of mutant kind. The sight of it enrages Nate as he lashes out at the Infinite and Magi forces guarding this facility. Chaos soon erupts, and the group is barely able to escape alive, though not without Nate revealing his powers to the Magi. Though Forge is enraged at Essex over this happening and is worried about Nate now being discovered, Nate Gray quickly recovers from the incident and tries to sneak away from the group. When confronted by Teresa as he tries to leave, Nate explains he was deeply shaken by what he had seen. And so Gray wants some answers. He and Sonic agree to go out on their own and find them. Instead of leaving though, Nate projects their minds out into the world. Traveling across the continent, they soon spot the ruins of Westchester Mansion and nearly manage to make contact with Magneto. Nate realizes, to his dismay, that Forge has been keeping him away from the X-Men all this time. Elsewhere, Brute confronts Essex and has finally realized that he was experimented on by this newcomer back in Apocalypse's pens. Not wanting the others to know about this, Essex brutally slaughters the simple-minded mutant. Later, Essex is confronted by Forge and is asked to leave the group. Before Essex can respond though, they are confronted by Domino, Grizzly, and Caliban. Across the world in Bristol, Weapon X looks for Jean Grey, who left him after they learned about the planned nuclear strike against Apocalypse. He finds her working to help the human refugees that recently arrived, courtesy of the heroic efforts of the X-Men operating in the long-conquered and mutant-controlled North America. This confirms to Weapon X that the Sentinels were able to make their way through the path he and Jean carved out of Apocalypse's seawall in the Atlantic Ocean. Jean explains to a worried Logan that she just needed to help somebody after learning what the Human Council is planning. She's desperate for an alternative to nuclear war, though Weapon X finds these thoughts shocking given the horrors Apocalypse has already unleashed on the world. Suddenly, 2 mutants, part of Abyss's Brotherhood, attack, revealed to have been stowed away on the ships with the other fleeing humans. As these evil mutants viciously attack the humans present, Jean and Weapon X strike out, making quick work of the two, but Logan is still left upset by the incident. He states to Jean that this is war and they must act accordingly, accusing the woman of being complacent in the face of this atrocity, and even hurtfully stating she was reluctant to ever leave the mindset of the slave pens he saved her from. Logan storms off, prepared to inform the Human Council of prime targets for their upcoming nuclear attack, and Jean is left devastated. On board a human airship, Logan goes to speak with the Council, when an old romantic partner of his, Lady Mariko, approaches. They speak briefly of old times with some fondness before Mariko admits that, like Jean, she is desperately seeking an alternative to nuclear war. Mariko states she does not trust Brian Braddock of the Human Council and feels plans go far beyond the current warfare between human and mutant. One of the aircraft nearby is then violently attacked by more stowaways working on behalf of Apocalypse, and they attempt to use the crashing blimp to destroy the human guidance system that would be used to launch nuclear missiles. They watch the Human Council realize that they could sacrifice their lives to save the device, but Brian Braddock is unwilling to make that sacrifice and discounts it as an option. Instead, Logan drops down from the ship to confront the terrorists at great risk, initially burning out his healing factor navigating through the flames of the vehicle. Recognizing fellows from his weapon series experiments that turned him into Weapon X, he and the terrorists are quick to fight one another. Weapon X is able to kill them and even survives the experience, but all the same the weapon's guidance system is destroyed, upsetting the Human Council as they can no longer make a surprise first attack. As Weapon X emerges from the resulting wreckage, he receives a short telepathic message from Jean, saying goodbye. He rushes to find her taking off in a plane, and threatens to stop her when he realizes she is going to war in America. Jean sadly states the only way she will stop is if Logan kills her, and since Weapon X is unwilling to do that, she simply kisses him and takes off, with Weapon X letting the woman he loves return home. With Callisto and countless others laying dead around him, Nightcrawler greets his mother, Mystique. It has been a long time since the two have seen each other, and Kurt's mother notes that his fur has not fared well under the poisoned air of New York. The two abscond onto Mystique's aircraft, where the woman explains she just happened to be here because she was investigating Callisto and her pirate crew, who had been slaughtering refugees at sea for some time. Watching this from her own vessel, Damask admires Kurt Darkholm's physique, while Wade despondently looks over the corpse of Danny Moonstar. With Damask in close but quiet pursuit, the Darkholms travel to Cold Grey, Mystique's Antarctic base of operations. While they engage in light banter for a time, Kurt eventually confronts his mother as to why she refuses to go to Avalon and see the mutant Destiny. She dodges this question, even when her son starts to get violent over it. He aggressively challenges her over her behavior around refugees, as in his eyes she takes everything they have just so they can escape America. Mystique starts to get despondent, claiming she's just doing what she has to so that her business can survive in this harsh world. With little more to say to one another, Mystique secures a small boat and they begin the last leg of the journey to Avalon. They encounter a man who introduces himself as Kane Marco, and he explains he will take them to Destiny. As they make their way into Avalon, and the land starts to become remarkably more and more hospitable, Kane speaks of his past criminal life with regret, and of his long-dead brother, Charles Xavier, a man who was murdered a long time ago. Kurt is dismissive of these words and says little in response during the journey, until finally they come to Destiny, tending a field with her adopted son, a young man named Douglas. Destiny welcomes the Darkholms as if they are new residents of Avalon, but Mystique states she wants Destiny to leave this place with them. Not saying a word to this, she instead takes them to meet the newest member of their small village, a young mutant named Switchback. Destiny reveals that Switchback's future showed her a grim truth. They are all about to die. Meanwhile, Deadman Wade and Damask enter Avalon, still in pursuit of their target. Damask is shocked at the sight of life around her, thinking that Apocalypse's realm was all that was really left of the Earth. Wade, on the other hand, is simply gleeful and almost delirious over the prospect of getting to murder more people. Mystique explains to Destiny how Magneto has learned of the altered timeline, but Destiny is unable to confirm any of this, and worries that Avalon will soon be destroyed no matter what happens or what Magneto does. The village is then attacked by Damask and Wade. Kurt tries to get Kane to help them, but the man collapses over the psychological strain at simply the notion of turning to violence again. So the Darkholmes are forced to act alone. They dodge fire from Wade, but Damask has a change of heart as she sees how beautiful this world can actually be were it not for Apocalypse. She attacks Deadman Wade, but before he can turn on her, Kurt teleports in and vanishes with Wade's head, instantly decapitating the unstable man. Damask explains that Apocalypse will send much worse than them here, but she is willing to fight for a land as pristine as Avalon. With Switchback joining them, the four prepare to square off against the forces of Apocalypse. In the kennels, Havoc puts down another escape attempt as Cyclops arrives, returning from his rescue of Polaris. Havoc confronts his brother with news of Aurora and Northstar's injuries, and accuses Scott of having something to do with it. When one of the mutants that was trying to escape gets up and attacks Havoc, Cyclops hesitates in assisting his brother, but does wind up cutting the attacking mutant in half. Havoc remains hostile towards his brother, threatening him and rebuffing Cyclops' aid. Privately, Scott begins to agonize over the cruelty of Apocalypse's regime, and outside, Jean Grey arrives back in America and begins to infiltrate the facility. She seeks out Mr. Sinister in the hopes of convincing him to stop Apocalypse before it is too late for the world, unaware that Sinister is long gone. She is nearly overwhelmed by a number of brains that have been removed from telepathic mutants and used as a protective measure for Apocalypse's headquarters. With strain, she pushes past this, finding Sinister's room completely destroyed. To a degree, she is unsurprised. It was Sinister that gave Apocalypse's plans to her and Weapon X, so that the Human Council could be warned. Jean is then discovered by Havoc, who is able to take her by surprise and knock the woman out cold. Alex later shows this discovery with sadistic pride to his brother, and has her brought before a dark beast. Scott is stunned to see this woman. 3 years ago, Scott first met Jean when she was living in captivity within Apocalypse's regime. Scott was there when Weapon X broke her out of captivity, and even lost an eye in the encounter when he tried to stop Jean from escaping with Logan. Havoc accuses Cyclops of working with her, but Jean denies this. Alex then reveals he has video evidence of Scott freeing Lorna, which actually stuns Jean and confirms a notion she's long had that there's good hidden deep within Scott Summers after all. Havoc then has his minions detain Scott, and pretty soon both he and Jean are experimented on by Dark Beast. Jean is able to resist Beast's power suppressants enough for her to use her telepathy. She breaks the control technology around Scott, enabling him to hit Beast with an optic blast, and the two begin to flee the lab. Apocalypse soon hears word of all of this, and orders Havoc to be contacted at once. The pens were always a conciliatory measure to ensure the loyalty of Mr. Sinister. With that horseman gone, he has no need for it, and orders they purge the prison camp at once. Elsewhere, Morph rescues Wildchild while Sunfire dispatches a group of Infinites, burning them to ash with impunity. Blink soon appears on the scene with Rogue, and both are dismayed to see Wildchild without Sabretooth. Since he cannot communicate normally, Wildchild licks Rogue and she learns through her powers of what happened to Sabretooth. She vows they are going to take down Holocaust once and for all. In the rain, Victor wakes up, and Holocaust welcomes him to the processing plant under his domain. After they trade barbs for a moment, Holocaust strikes out, cutting Sabretooth open viciously. Back at the mansion, Magneto asks Bishop if he is ready to kill Legion should they find a way to send him back in time. It would restore the timeline, but Eric does not like the odds of relying on the broken and psychologically unstable mutant he sees before him. Bishop admits that killing goes beyond much of what they are fighting for, but Eric recognizes that Bishop's world contains a possible future for his son, while it seems increasingly unlikely there is anything left for him here. Suddenly, an automated process transports Magneto's son Charles to safety in a magnetic cocoon. To Eric's dismay, this can only mean one thing. his security systems have detected that Apocalypse is coming. Not long after this, Rogue and her X-Men attack Holocaust's headquarters. They fight their way inside past many Infinites and begin to assess how much damage they can do while they're here, with the intent on taking the entire facility down. Blink suddenly disappears from the rest of the group, as she spots where Holocaust left behind what remains of Sabretooth. On the mansion grounds, though Eric is no longer at the peak of his strength, he is still able to easily wipe out the attackers. He worries though, as this was too easy, and Bishop points out he recently battled Infinites in Seattle that were much stronger. It turns out they were merely a distraction. Apocalypse strikes Magneto down in a single blow. Bishop strikes out, but is no match for the Tyrant, who merely views him with vague curiosity. Apocalypse taunts Magneto, remembering that Eric once nearly killed him by destroying his celestial vessel long ago. That nearly finished Apocalypse for good, but it left Magneto half as strong as he once was, and with Apocalypse, only the strong survive. Underground, Eric's son Charles is attacked by one of Apocalypse's mutants. Fortunately, the child is well protected. Sometime later, Quicksilver's team returns home to find a number of dead Infinites but no sign of anyone else. Exodus manages to discover Magneto's helmet, worrying the X-Men tremendously. Quicksilver races off to the city where he demands answers from Angel, who is despondent as most of his friends have gone missing or have been taken by Apocalypse's regime in recent days. Warren explains to Pietro that Bishop and Magneto were taken down by Apocalypse himself, and that Eric is being kept here at the heart of Apocalypse's power. Bishop was taken to be investigated by the Magi in their facility in Quebec, where he is telepathically tortured by the Shadow King for some time. The Shadow King is able to quickly determine Bishop's true origins, but is driven off by the X-Men before he can learn more. Abyss then reveals himself, having survived the earlier encounter with Quicksilver, and demands they learn what secrets they can from this strange mutant. Pietro is nearly overwhelmed by this news, but decides it is essential they save Bishop if his father's plans are to become a reality. He dispatches Dazzler and Exodus to try and find Charles, while the rest go to find Abyss. For now, Magneto is on his own, and at the very limited mercy of Apocalypse. In the domain of Apocalypse, the deadly assassin Domino and her two underlings, Grizzly and Caliban, accost Forge. She demands to know where the telepath is, so Forge drops a flash grenade and runs off, buying himself a moment of time. But he loses sight of Essex in the process. He runs and finds Toad and Mastermind, asking after Nate Gray and knowing they are all in danger. In a bid to buy them some time, Mastermind creates an illusion of Apocalypse that attacks Domino, but she quickly sees through this and vaporizes Mastermind with a single blast from her weapon. Forge is only saved by the timely arrival of X-Man, who unleashes his still-developing powers on Domino. Nate is powerful, and it pushes Domino in a way few others have, but she considers herself the world's greatest assassin for a reason, and is able to use her luck powers to knock the powerful young boy down. Meanwhile, Toad duels Caliban, besting the attacker and killing him, only to be murdered by Grizzly immediately after. Forge and Sonic angrily and brutally kill Grizzly in revenge. This catches Domino's attention for a moment, giving Nate the opportunity to seize her with his telekinesis. Full of rage, Nathaniel begins to peel away at her mind, burning through her memories, a lifetime of murder, until there is nothing left. In the aftermath, Forge and X-Man embrace, relieved to see each other and quickly affirming their shared love as father and son. Nate Gray admits he hasn't been listening to Forge as much as he should have been, and they agree that X-Man needs more time before he is ready to face Apocalypse. Forge says he is proud of Nate, that knowing your limits is one of the hardest parts of growing up. As the makeshift family prepare to leave, Forge then finds Brute murdered by Essex. He confronts the stranger on the matter, and Essex eagerly welcomes a fight. Nearby, Nathan is suddenly struck by an unsettling feeling thanks to his psychic bond with Forge. He rushes off, only to find his adoptive father dying before him. Forge's life flashes before the young telepath's eyes as his father passes away, and Nate sees how Essex betrayed them. Forge says he is sorry, that he only wishes they could have had more time together, and instructs his boy to find Magneto. An explosion of power rings out from Nathan in his grief. Essex appears and says he is impressed, ready to begin their work. X-Man lashes out against him, which only serves to destroy Sinister's disguise. Now revealed, Mr. Sinister promises his creation all the answers the boy could want. Across the world, a young woman named Gwen Stacy walks among the ruins of Wakanda. She remembers a golden land that once stood here, but it's all gone now. Gwen delivers aid to the starving masses living here and comforts a boy who cries over his sick mother. All of a sudden, an explosion rocks the land, and the boy she held mere moments ago is violently killed. A group of freelance human terrorists, tolerated by Apocalypse only for the damage they do to the human world, arrive on the scene. They are called the Marauders, composed of Wilson Fisk and Norman Osborn, two wealthy individuals from the States that bought their way into this group. There is also an assassin only known as Arcade, and a mysterious figure called the Owl. They attack the people living here, and in a desperate move, Gwen manages to shoot Fisk dead. The surviving Marauders are all violently killed when a cargo vessel piloted by Tony Stark and Clint Barton arrives on the scene. Gwen greets them and is soon joined by Dr. Donald Blake. Tony states Donald is needed back in England. There, a terrifying sight is in the skies this evening. An armada of mutant vessels have returned, with such a thing not seen in these skies since these ships cut a bloody path through Europe and the rest of the world during Apocalypse's first round of brutal slaughter inflicted on the human race years ago. Susan Storm watches this unfold nervously, thinking of how her brother Johnny and romantic partner Reed died in those days. She talks with her current partner Ben Grimm, and both are skeptical that any sort of peace can be reached with Apocalypse. Nevertheless, Mikhail, the forgotten horseman of Apocalypse, has apparently come here for that exact purpose. On board their ship, Mikhail's subordinate, an augmented human named Matt Murdock, confirms that the humans are stockpiling nuclear weapons, but Mikhail was already well aware of that. He's also been informed that their nuclear targeting systems have been completely destroyed, and is eager to bring some changes to the world. While they are flying a ship, Ben and Sue are nearly killed by an explosion that wipes out any remaining human that would have been able to pilot vessels capable of delivering nuclear bombs to Apocalypse's territories. Realizing the human race no longer has any means to retaliate against Apocalypse, the two investigate the area, where they are attacked by the Hulk. Bruce Banner is behind this, having agreed to become his alter ego in a bid to survive in Apocalypse's world. Sue is able to sneak up behind the Hulk and badly wounds him by shooting him in the back of the head. The Hulk stumbles away, transforming back into Bruce Banner, who the two find bleeding from his wound. Victor Von Doom greets Mikhail on behalf of the Human Council. With him, Mikhail speaks to a large crowd of humans, offering them relief from the endless war under a new nation he will protect, where humans and mutants can live together in unity. He offers aid to humanity in the form of food, water, and clothing, inviting representatives of the Human Council to come on board his flagship to prove he has nothing to hide. Doom, Stark, Gwen Stacy, Donald Blake, Bruce Banner, Ben Grimm, and Sue Storm all agree to go on board. As the crowd below reaches a frenzy of support for Mikhail's new plans, on board his ship, the Horseman is revealed to have a mutant named Empath he has been tortuously using to manipulate the masses below. Elsewhere, Weapon X pulverizes two cyborgs that work for Apocalypse. These augmented humans guard the entrance to a facility in the now devastated Wundagore Mountain. Logan gives pause at this site, as it was once the home to the X-Men before Apocalypse destroyed it, and where they lost Wanda. Weapon X quickly detects that he is being watched, and Carol Danvers is indeed behind him. Carol has been stationed here guarding the very reason Logan has come, but nevertheless she agrees to take him up a tall and lonely tower to the mutant she has been taking care of. Back in London, the High Human Council eagerly awaits news of Logan's mission. He is their last hope now, as he seeks the only remaining chance they have to fire the nuclear missiles. Weapon X is brought to Gateway, a mutant with the ability to teleport, and angrily confronts him, demanding he help destroy Apocalypse's domain. Gateway is able to use his powers to read Logan's memories, yet still declines to help deliver the human's payload of nuclear weapons, viewing it as an extreme act of violence he wants no part of. Gateway is more interested in preserving every bit of human knowledge he can, but soon Apocalypse's forces close in on their location and attack. Carol is forced to sacrifice herself to save Logan and Gateway, and the two flee the area in a plane. Gateway asks to be taken to the Human Council. Though he hasn't agreed to anything yet, he is at least willing to hear them out now, clearly moved by Carol's heroism and Logan's determination. At the core facility, Colossus and his team successfully break into the labor camp run by the fearsome and deadly Sugar Man. This villain nearly catches Colossus's students as they are freeing Ileana from her imprisonment. Meanwhile, out in space, Gambit and the Externals observe an impossibly large device built around a planet the Starjammers have brought them to. The mad empire of the Shi'ar, known as D'Ken, hopes to use this world-spanning device to contain the all-powerful McCann crystal, which is here. Gambit asks Deathbird if they should reconsider their plan to steal the crystal, feeling the odds are heavily stacked against them, but she insists they must do this and have no other choice. Their ship is attacked, and Deathbird promises the Starjammers will keep D'Ken's forces busy while she, Gambit, and his team seek the McCann crystal, and the Externals are quickly attacked by ground troops stationed there. The mutants are more than capable of battling these soldiers, as they remind the team of fighting the Infinites back home. Gambit and Lyla leave the battle to Sunspot, Strong Guy, and Jubilee, so the two heroes can focus on stealing the crystal with Deathbird. Finding it in a short time, Gambit is surprised to see the crystal is now 3 stories tall, but Deathbird reassures him that even a sliver of the crystal contains as much power as its whole. Suddenly, Lyla is pulled into the crystal entirely. Gambit panics and dives in after her, and Deathbird follows them in. They encounter a small being named Joff, who warns them the entire universe is about to be destroyed. He takes them to D'Ken and Lyla, who are frozen, transfixed, staring at a red light. Deathbird also becomes frozen when they get close to it, as these three would all take the power from the crystal without giving anything in return. Joff explains the nature of the McCann crystal as a nexus point between all matter and antimatter. It must remain intact or all of reality will be annihilated, as the crystal preserves the barrier between these two fundamental but oppositional forces of reality. The strange little being confirms everything Bishop said was true, and that the timeline was altered such that the McCann crystal was never saved by the Phoenix Force in the original timeline. This is having a cascading effect on the rest of the multiverse, which will eventually lead to the destruction of all known forms of reality. Gambit is initially overwhelmed by this information and doubts himself with such enormous stakes at hand. Joff, a guardian of the crystal, is unable to act on it himself, but feels Gambit has it in him to steal a sliver of the crystal, use it to send Bishop back in time, and save everyone else. Outside, the Externals are attacked by Gladiator, with Richter in tow, and the 3 remaining mutants realize they are in trouble. Shortly after, though, Gladiator turns into glass when he gets too close to the crystal, while the Externals are pulled into the artifact with Richter. Gambit is able to retrieve the crystal while his team watches on, but as Joff explains, it requires a sacrifice to do this. Giving up the only thing Gambit truly values, Remy leaves behind his love for Rogue, and the team emerge from the crystal with Deathbird and D'Ken. Lyla begins to teleport them back home, but Sunspot sadly has absorbed too much energy from this battle and elects to stay behind and die. Galaxies away, Holocaust is confronted by a vengeful Blink in his fortress. Remarking on the damage she caused here, Apocalypse's son is impressed, and he gloats over having killed Sabretooth. Blink attacks and manages to drop him in a vat of genetic material. Nearby, the other X-Men battle the Infinites, while Shiro and Wildchild free a number of survivors being held here. Morph comes across Blink during this battle just as Holocaust re-emerges and attacks them both. The X-Men regroup and manage to fight back against this powerful horseman, with Rogue ultimately pinning this monster down and pummeling the villain. He is just barely able to escape, nearly taking Rogue with him through a teleporter into Apocalypse's New York stronghold, but an Iceman manages to pull her back just in time. It is then that Rogue discovers a still healing Victor Creed. With Apocalypse's forces retreating back to his citadel, the gathered X-Men prepare for the final battle, with Rogue declaring an end to the Age of Apocalypse. Meanwhile, Colossus's team, posing as one of Sugarman's lackeys named Quietus, are discovered by the villain. Before the Sugarman can have them killed, a massive explosion rocks the power facility, caused by Shadowcat and Colossus. The team battles Sugarman's forces and quickly begins suffering casualties in this resulting conflict. However, Colossus is finally able to rescue his sister and manages to brutally injure Sugarman. The facility erupts into chaos. Knowing that Magneto's need for Illyana comes before anything else, Colossus orders Shadowcat to get the three of them out of here, leaving the others behind. Though he claims they will come back for his students later, they are left in a bad situation, with only Huss still left standing as she, the other students, and the rioting prisoners are overwhelmed by Sugarman's gruesome forces. Once Shadowcat gets Colossus and Illyana to a safe distance, she insists on going back for the others. But Peter refuses to risk his wife and goes instead. However, when he finds Husk, she is surrounded and overwhelmed. Colossus is frightened by this and decides not to help her, abandoning his students to their deaths. He joins with Katya and Illyana and coldly reports he could do nothing for the others. And even young Illyana can sense a rift growing between her brother and his disappointed wife. In the sewers beneath New York City, Dazzler and Exodus search for Magneto's son, Charles. They find the remains of Charles's robot guardian Nanny, but no sight of the boy. The young Charles was ultimately seized by Apocalypse himself after Strong Guy betrayed the returning Gambit and Externals. He overwhelmed Jubilee and captured both Charles and the Macran Crystal, delivering both to Apocalypse himself, while Apocalypse mercilessly executed Richter for failing to do anything of substance. Gambit and Lila Cheney barely survived this experience, only rescued by Dazzler and Exodus happening upon them. They promptly took the other two to be reunited with the rest of the X-Men. Not long after this, Apocalypse is outraged to learn Domino has failed to retrieve the mysterious new telepath. Though he vows to deal with that matter personally, for now he turns his attention to his captive Magneto, suffering badly under the despot's custody. Across the nation, Nathaniel lashes out against Mr. Sinister. The former Horseman is impressed by X-Man's tremendous power, but easily resists the boy's attacks, able to heal from any damage he's able to cause. Nathan briefly stands down as Mr. Sinister explains how he spent centuries waiting for the right DNA to create Nathaniel Grey. When he finally got a hold of the genetic code of Cyclops and Jean Grey, he was able to grow the boy at an accelerated rate. All in the hopes that finally someone will be strong enough to kill Apocalypse. Suddenly, Sinister is attacked by Sauron and Teresa, the last two survivors among Nate's friends, giving X-Man the opportunity to finally overpower his creator and mortally wound him. Realizing he will have to face Apocalypse sooner or later, Nate decides to say goodbye to his friends and go confront his destiny. Using his telepathy, the young mutant is able to detect Magneto falling to the power of Apocalypse and heads deep into the Tyrant's domain. There, he is shocked to run into both Cyclops and Jean Grey together. A psychic reaction between Jean and Nate provokes her into trusting the young man, recognizing their familiar bond even if she doesn't quite understand it. The three wish each other well as the two parties go their separate ways. Over in Avalon, Nightcrawler, Damask, Mystique, and Switchback all stand over Wade Wilson's now headless body. Kurt asks Damask what Apocalypse will do now that his team has been defeated, and she admits she doesn't know. Switchback and Mystique survey the survivors and speak with Douglas, a young man and son of Destiny, whose linguistic abilities allow him to translate all speech between the refugees from all around the world who have come here. Not long after this, a young mutant living here with electric powers cries out as she has been possessed by Apocalypse's response, Amal Farouk, also known as the deadly and fearsome Shadow King. Mystique ruthlessly kills the possessed mutant, but Damask explains that won't work, and the Shadow King will just take a new host. Or hosts. Many in the village cry out as they are possessed by Farouk, who announces his intention to destroy Avalon. Though Damask manages to drive the Shadow King out for a moment, he only goes on to possess Mystique, delighting in her shape-shifting abilities. Working together, Switchback, Nightcrawler, and Damask manage to damage Farouk's mind, but residual telepathic commands leave one mutant on the cusp of murdering Destiny. Doug dives in the way, sacrificing himself to save his mother. A saddened Destiny is moved by all of this, and finally agrees to go with Nightcrawler and work with Magneto to defeat Apocalypse and restore the timeline. At the pens, Alex Summers orders his team and Dark Beast to purge all the prisoners being kept here. Dark Beast and the Bedlam brothers voice their protests at this, but such concerns are meaningless, for these orders come from Apocalypse himself now that Sinister is gone. Nearby, and a little later, Jean Grey and Scott learn of this planned purge, when the Bedlam brothers confront the two. The brothers are reasonable enough that each side tries to talk the other down and not want to fight each other. Ultimately, the Bedlams agree that these killings need to be stopped, so they let Scott and Jean pass while promising to hold off the Guthries, who they hate anyways. Over in heaven, Angel's club is assaulted by Infinites, intent on arresting Warren. Angel manages to fight back and escape, though is saddened by the knowledge that his life of running this luxurious club has been brought to a sudden end. Scott and Jean manage to reach the Brain Trust, the telepathic brains they use to keep the pens pacified and the entire Citadel secure from psychic attack. The brains try to restrain their attacker, sentient enough to recognize they are in danger, so they disable Scott's optic beams and nearly overwhelm Jean. But, tapping into her incredible psychic abilities, Grey is able to overpower the Brain Trust and kill the psychic network entirely. Jean is left feeling strange, as she has never used that much of her telepathic power before. In the resulting debris, the Bedlam brothers find Summer and Grey, having taken down both Guthrie siblings themselves. Scott and Jean ask them to take out the facility's power next, which the Bedlams are more than ready to handle. With that, Jean and Scott are able to start evacuating prisoners. As things start to get out of control, Dark Beast decides it has become clear he needs to move on and prepares to leave. It is then that a furious Havoc confronts his brother. With Jean still weakened from her battle with the Brain Trust to help much, the energy of the Summers brothers collides. Their energies cancel each other out, so they resort to hand-to-hand combat, and Scott manages to knock Alex out. Scott refuses to kill his brother, and Jean says she is proud of him, which moves Cyclops greatly, as he has known little love in his life up until now. They lead the prisoners out of here in search of a better world. In the burning wreckage of the pens, Alex stirs, vowing to get revenge on his brother. In Europe, Weapon X uses a holographic projector to convince Gateway Apocalypse must be stopped. So Gateway tells the Human Council he will transport the human fleet to Apocalypse for a final confrontation. As the gathered forces prepare to move out, Donald Pierce attacks the command ship, and Brian Braddock betrays the human race on behalf of Apocalypse. Brian dies in the resulting skirmish, double-crossing Pierce in one last attempt at redemption. Meanwhile, Carol Danvers, altered and revived by Donald Pierce's technology, attacks Weapon X. She is soon downed and begs for death, which Pierce, injured and going crazy thanks to Brian's attack, happily obliges and stabs her in the back. In response, Logan kills Donald just as Gateway is finally able to teleport the human fleet into Apocalypse's domain. At the consecrated Temple of the Magi, erected upon what was once known as Quebec City, Apocalypse's worshippers prepare to ritualistically sacrifice Bishop. Suddenly, however, the air turns frigid, and Storm arrives on the scene. With a gust the strength of a hurricane, she blows the Magi away and mounts a rescue of Bishop. Meanwhile, Banshee and Quicksilver work their way deeper into the temple in search of a critical target. Jamie Madrox, the original Multiple Man from whom all Magi are derived. Jamie by now has long gone mad due to the strain of his powers being used like this and genetic alterations made by the Dark Beast, so he welcomes the sight of the X-Men in the hopes they will finally release him from this tortuous existence. In Westchester, the rest of the X-Men find Iceman, who informs them that Magneto and Charles have been captured. Colossus, Shadowcat, and Liliana also arrive on the scene, telling the others of what happened to them. The group goes into the tunnels in search of Magneto and his son, finding Gambit and the others who were down here. In a rage at the loss of Charles, Rogue physically attacks Remy. Back in the ruins of Quebec, Quicksilver and Banshee hesitate about what to do with Jamie, when they are suddenly attacked by Abyss, who has managed to recover from his last encounter with the X-Men. Banshee demands Quicksilver flee with Madrox while he dives into the villain with his full sonic might. As a result, Apocalypse's minion is torn apart, and the temple begins to collapse. Quicksilver rushes off with Jamie, and Multiple Man is able to use what little power he has left to recall the Magi into him, killing Madrox but saving Storm and Bishop in the process. Back at the X-Mansion, the others manage to calm Rogue down as Pietro, Storm, and Bishop return. Sabretooth asks what they should do next, and Quicksilver says they need to recover the M'Kraan Shard, Magneto, and Charles. Today is the day. Apocalypse must fall. In London, thousands of desperate humans wait to board Mikhail's ship, hoping to accept his new offer that they be augmented into becoming mutants themselves. Doom and the humans that came with him have been taken prisoner, and are forced to watch helplessly as the machines begin to brutally work on Tony Stark. Nearby, Matt Murdock watches over a screaming empath, Mikhail's experiment at elevating humankind into mutant supremacy. The vast majority of participants in this project die, rejecting the required implants, and instead these people are coldly used to harvest organs. Murdock begins expressing doubts about all of this. Outside, what remains of the High Human Council convenes in the ruins of Big Ben. They know they must put a stop to this madness. Attending this meeting is Mikhail himself, who uses the riots outside he is secretly causing with Empath to justify the occupation. However, the humans do have some plans in motion. Though Stark dies in response to Mikhail's brutal experimentations, special feedback loops were placed in his artificial heart, temporarily disabling Mikhail's ship. The freed humans are able to revive Tony Stark and arm themselves, staging a massive uprising against Mikhail. Donald Blake confronts the Horsemen just as his ship begins to fall from the sky. Mikhail calls in one of his Strife forces, elite soldiers that make up his personal guard, and orders them to kill the High Human Council. However, Victor Von Doom stops this just as, on board the damaged ship, Matt Murdock comes to his senses and frees Empath. With the city's population no longer under his control, things quickly spiral into chaos. In the resulting battle, Donald Blake manages to knock Mikhail out of the Big Ben Tower and both plummet to their deaths. During this, the seawalls come down, and more Apocalypse reinforcements arrive. This convinces a traitorous Bruce Banner to make a deal with the surviving humans. He helps them seize control of the approaching craft, and the survivors then use these vessels to leave Earth entirely, going out into space in the hopes of finding a better home among the stars. Shortly before this, Magneto suffered badly under the captivity and watchful eye of Apocalypse. The confident Ansaba Nur reveals to Eric they have set a trap for the X-Men who will undoubtedly come here in an effort to rescue their leader. Magneto denies his team would take such a risk, but Apocalypse informs him they will have no choice. The Tyrant reveals he has learned about the altered timeline after Shadow King discovered it within Bishop's mind when they had him in captivity. So Apocalypse has obtained the M'Kraan Crystal Shard to ensure the X-Men will have no chance of altering history and will die trying to get the crystal back. In spite of Apocalypse's confidence, Magneto knows Ansaba Nur's rule is crumbling around them. Outside, Angel fights through Apocalypse's forces, finding in Karma he regretfully witnesses die in his arms. Nearby, the X-Men arrive, reunited with Nightcrawler as the gathered mutants begin their final battle, attacking the pens. They are surprised to find the area abandoned and an injured Dark Beast, who informs them of the revolt that occurred here. Not far from this, Jean Grey and Scott Summers lead the freed prisoners to New Jersey, where they hope to escape Apocalypse's clutches. Flying above, Angel manages to destroy the energy shield around Apocalypse's fortress, at the cost of his own life. This allows Nathaniel Grey to fly right in, intent on confronting Apocalypse. Suddenly, the Shadow King cries out, as the entire Midwest of the United States has just been bombed into nuclear oblivion by the Eurasian forces, which have arrived from the Pacific. Apocalypse responds by pushing the Seawall forces across to Europe to counter with his own weaponry. With the conflict escalating rapidly, Apocalypse decides to kill Magneto and move on, when X-Man bursts in and attacks the despot. Magneto recognizes the boy as the powerful new telepath Forge spoke of, and, now freed, the two prepare to take on Apocalypse together. Below, the X-Men charge towards the crystal. The Macran grows and glows as they approach, and Destiny sees visions of the altered timeline, confirming everything Bishop said to be true. Magneto, Holocaust, and X-Man then burst through the ceiling mid-battle. X-Men knocks their foe away, giving Magneto enough time to approach Illyana and explain that she must send Bishop back in time so they can recreate the better world. Realizing this would mean a world without her being captured by Sugar Man, she agrees to help, though Colossus protests, not wanting to endanger his sister. As the fortress begins to collapse around them, the X-Men rush to the crystal, defending it as they prepare to send Bishop through time. Outside, Jean Grey detects the deaths of millions on the west coast, and uses her powers to hold off the bombs falling here. She doesn't notice that high above, Weapon X, who was part of the attack fleet, has gone ahead to make peace here before the missiles come for the east coast. X-Man defeats Holocaust with relative ease, showing off his incredible powers and growing confidence in them. Meanwhile, the situation around the crystal is unraveling. Sugar Man, having come here too, realizes the situation is a losing one, and jumps straight into the crystal himself. Colossus, feeling they're going to die here no matter what happens, decides he will at least be at his sister's side for the end, at any cost. He charges towards her, straight through Iceman when Robert tries to stop his former companion, and shatters him. In response, Gambit blasts Peter. With Destiny's guidance, Illyana is able to send Bishop back in time amidst the chaos around them. The world erupts into nuclear warfare. Apocalypse contemplates the meaning of this, wondering if he failed to create a domain where the strong only survive. Instead, perhaps he strengthened them all, the weak along with the strong, and mankind and mutant kind were always destined to simply destroy each other no matter what he did. Magneto and Rogue burst in, ready for a fight, but Apocalypse is quick to reveal their son Charles being kept here by Strongman as a hostage. Outside, Jean is fatally blasted by Havoc as Weapon X approaches. Scott is dismayed at this, knowing that without Jean they're all about to die in nuclear fire, but Havoc is focused entirely on revenge. Before he can strike his brother down though, Weapon X sneaks up behind Alex and kills the little fascist. The injured Jean dies before a saddened Logan and injured Cyclops. In the past, Bishop comes before Legion about to strike his own father down. As time runs out for the X-Men, Dark Beast teleports away from the conflict into the heart of the Macran crystal, though Pietro manages to sabotage the controls before it activates, leaving McCoy's fate unknown. Meanwhile, Colossus refuses to listen to his fellow mutants and continues to charge relentlessly towards his sister. Shadowcat steps in front of Peter, confident that his love for her will stop the man, so much so she doesn't use her intangibility powers. This proves a fatal mistake, and Colossus accidentally crushes his wife to death. In response, Gambit blasts the despondent Colossus again, this time rupturing his steel body. Peter falls, heartbroken and insensible. Illyana approaches her brother, and the man says goodbye before passing away, and Quicksilver races in to grab the young girl before she is hurt. Rogue easily defeats Strong Guy and retrieves her son, while Apocalypse manages to down Magneto briefly enough that the despot can make an attempted escape from this dying world, revealing he has another piece of the Macran crystal. However, it is at that point that X-Man finally finds Apocalypse and mounts an attack on the mighty villain. In the past, Bishop manages to fight off an older version of himself to tackle Legion, and forces David to psychically see what he's about to do to the timeline. Legion and Bishop then explode in a wave of psychic energy. As a result, Legion appears to be fatally wounded. Bishop holds him, telling David what a disappointment he all was, only for Bishop to disappear from existence, having undone his own reality. The timeline begins to restore itself, with the time-traveling X-Men from the Legion quest being returned to a restored present. The Charles Xavier and Eric Lenscher of the past lose all memory of this encounter, with only Gabby experiencing a faint sense of maternal loss. Legion appears to disappear from the timeline entirely. In the Age of Apocalypse, Magneto and X-Men blast the tyrant that destroyed this world. Though Holocaust joins the fray and nearly turns the tide against the two heroes, Magneto concentrates and with some effort manages to split Apocalypse in half, finally ending his monstrous rule. With only a minute left until the bombs fall on this location, Eric finds Rogue and informs her it is finally over. They affirm their love for each other and their son as the bombs fall and everything goes white.